Good morning. I'm Valerie Santos, the chair of the WMATA board. Thank you for being here with us on this very, very somber day. Before we begin our board meeting, just want to take a moment of silence in remembrance of the individuals, the passengers, airline staff, soldiers who lost their lives last night in the crash near Reagan National Airport. On behalf of the board, we offer our sincerest condolences to the families of people who were lost in this terrible tragedy. And our thoughts and prayers are with the first responders who fight challenging conditions during this recovery mission. Thank you, and we will begin our meeting now. Okay, so welcome to Metro Board activities for January 30th of 2025. First, I'll ask our Deputy Chief Safety and Readiness Officer, Jamie Johnson, to provide today's safety contact.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you very much, everybody. So I just wanted to make a few points, not necessarily providing advice, but just giving context on safety. The first is about the region, the second is about being prepared, and lastly, it's about coordination and collaboration. So yesterday's sad event really does highlight that we are part of a very complex region that rallies when incidents like this occur. We are a regional service. Last night, the General Manager and the Chief Operating Officer immediately rallied our teams and identified how we could support this response. My second point is about preparedness. You will hear today multiple examples from the Metro Transit Police to emergency preparedness, the Metro Integrated Command Center, emergency occupational health and wellness, about how we are prepared to respond to incidents like this. And lastly, about coordination and collaboration. Being safe is really about those two words. We work on it every day internally. And of note today, we work extensively with our jurisdictional partners to make sure we play our part in responding to an incident like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Welcome to this meeting of the board's executive committee. Since this is our first public meeting of the day, I'll ask Ms. Ellison, our board corporate secretary, to please call the roll.
Chair Santos.
Present.
Vice Chair Smedberg.
Present.
Vice Chair McAndrew.
Present.
Director Klein.
Present.
Director Haddon-Lowe.
Present.
Director Letourneau. Director Martin Proctor.
Good morning.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And our first order of business is to approve the agenda. We have today's agenda in front of us for approval. Are there any objections by members of the committee to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Now to the approval of minutes. We have minutes from our last public meeting and executive session. Really? This can't be right. On November 21st. Okay. Before us for approval. Are there any objections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as presented. We have one item on today's agenda, the semi-annual Talented Teams report. The executive committee is responsible for the implementation of Metro's strategic transformation plan, including its Talented Teams report, Talented Teams Gold, which is to attract, develop, retain top talent. Today we'll receive one of two annual updates on how Metro is making progress in meeting its goals around talented teams. I will turn it over to Ms. Sherry Dickerson.
Good morning. I'm Sherry Dickerson, Chief People Officer, and I'm joining Jamie Johnson, who will assist in presenting this report. This report focuses on the Talented Team goal, and it is our commitment to report twice annually on our progress, highlighting efforts that bring us closer to meeting our three objectives under this goal. Metro's workforce of roughly 12,900 staff is one of our most critical resources to delivering the world-class transit system that this region deserves. Metro must attract, develop, and retain top talent where individuals feel valued, supported, and proud of their contributions. This presentation will provide updates on Metro's effort to ramp up recruitment to address the vacancies that accumulated during the hiring freeze put in place from February through June 24 to control costs. As you'll see, once we resume posting positions, it takes several months to get staff trained and on board. We'll also cover 2 efforts underway this year to improve employee collaboration and ensure our staff remain healthy and supported to reduce absenteeism and improve engagement. Effective recruitment and hiring practices are key to maintaining the almost 13,500 staff needed to provide quality service. The results on these 2 measures showcase the important role predictable funding levels play in managing our key resources, our people. To control costs and respond to budget uncertainty, Metro implemented a hiring freeze in February 2024, which lasted till June of 2024. As you can see, our vacancy rate climbed during this time frame as we continued to have regular levels of retirements and turnover, but we're not actively recruiting to backfill these roles. Turning the tide takes time, and we anticipate that we'll need about 12 to 15 months to get our vacancy rate back down to the levels we saw in February. You can see the recent past that it took about 13 months to go from 11% to 8%. Over the past 5 months, we've stabilized that rate, basically hiring at a pace that covers turnover, and hope to see the rate stop dropping soon. Since July, we have posted over 380 jobs, covering over 850 vacancies. One way we try to speed up our hiring process and efficiently use the time of our hiring panels is to use one vacancy announcement to recruit for several staff. We successfully onboarded 413 external hires to Metro, about half of whom were bus operators. Vacancies also present an opportunity for promotions. We have promoted an additional 200 staff into new roles between July and November. Of course, these promotions don't decrease the number of vacancies, it just creates additional vacancies. This contributes to the longer recovery times. For critical frontline roles, the work doesn't stop just because we have vacancies. So we've also seen an increase in overtime as we cover vacancies while we ramp up recruitment. On the time to hire side, Metro has set an ambitious goal to reduce our time to hire for external recruitments to 90 days by FY28. While it looks like we have moved in the wrong direction for FY25 with an average of 129 days, this has also been driven by the hiring freeze. Time to hire was 176 days for staff who started in July. This means that they filled positions that were actually opened in January or early February before the hiring freeze, and this contributed to the longer timelines. Time to hire was steadily decreased over the course of the fiscal year, reaching a 3-year low of 97 days in November. This means that staff joining Metro in November were in response to jobs that were posted in August. And this is to attribute to the team that does this work. I think this has been a great time for them to learn how to do things differently and try to streamline our processes. And this demonstrates how that work is coming to fruition. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jamie, who will talk about wellness.
Great, thank you, Sherry. Dr. Amy S.B. Smith is caught in, she's up in the air at the moment following disruption, last night's incident. So I am speaking on wellness and the Employee Assistance Program. Just a little bit about Dr. Amy Espy-Smith, because she's a very critical member of the Metro team, just to give you a bit of context. As Chief Medical Officer, she oversees the Occupational Health and Wellness Department and also serves as the Medical Review Officer for the Drug and Alcohol Program. She has been with Metro for 7 years and has a career of over 20 years in occupational health, environmental medicine, and internal medicine. Dr. Espy-Smith's Occupational Health and Wellness Department is responsible for the health and well-being of Metro's 13,000 plus employees, of which approximately 8,500 are considered safety-sensitive employees, which ultimately they're classified by the Department of Transportation as performing a safety-sensitive function like carrying a weapon or driving a bus with passengers. Occupational health and wellness has many areas of focus that support our colleagues. The clinical services program is essential to provide a full medical clinic, mostly focused on the safety-sensitive population I mentioned, and includes services such as physical examinations, return to work evaluations, fitness for duty evaluations. The 24/7 drug and alcohol compliance program ensures all employees abide by Metro's drug and alcohol policy and is tightly focused on the regulatory requirements specific to safety-sensitive employees. The Americans with Disabilities Act compliance program focuses on Title I of the ADA, ensuring reasonable accommodations for employees. The Health Quality and Compliance program ensures the security and privacy of health data and compliance with HIPAA laws. Lastly, the focus of today's presentation, we have our Wellness and Health Strategy program, which is led by Spencer Jones, and our Employee Assistance program managed by Larita Mullins. As an organization, we are continually improving and prioritizing the well-being of our employees. I will now outline some updates about our wellness initiatives, their measurable impact, and the strategic direction we are taking to foster a healthier and more engaged workforce. We have overcome resourcing challenges in recent years and now have the tools, data, and partnerships to gain meaningful insights and drive program enhancements aligned to the strategic transformation plan. I'll cover recent accomplishments, our upcoming and new initiatives, and overall benefits of well-being, which is all covered on this slide. So current events, we are partnering with Sherry's team and been doing so for the last 2 years to reintroduce annual open enrollment health and benefits fairs. These fairs highlight the wide range of benefits available to employees, including insurance options, retirement plans, life insurance, wellness services, and in the employee assistant program services, and additional healthy activities designed to engage and support our workforce. We offer employees annual flu vaccines, on-site fitness classes, as well as annual fitness activities such as Bike DC or the Turkey Trot. We try and gather a team of employees to do those kinds of activities together. On January the 7th, we launched a comprehensive wellness platform aimed at encouraging employees to adopt and maintain healthy daily habits. The platform addresses key areas of well-being, mental, physical, financial, and social, and offers incentives for participation throughout the year. Employees earn additional rewards for completing their annual physicals and health assessments, and by prioritizing overall well-being, employees gain access to personalized resources while the wellness team tailor programs to their specific needs. Data from health assessments and biometric screenings will enable us to compare perceived risks with actual health risks. This insight through data allows us to identify employees who may be at risk of specific diseases or conditions, sometimes preventable medical conditions, and we can design an intervention program to reduce the risk, to trying to use data to get ahead of the issues. The potential return on investment from a wellness program is significant. There's extensive research into this. For example, a Harvard Business Review study shows wellness programs can generate a $6 return for every $1 invested. There's reductions in healthcare costs, $3.27 saved per every dollar spent, and reduced absenteeism, which is a real priority for us. Wellness programs also drive engagement in 4 other ways. By showing employees they are valued, boosting morale, loyalty, and engagement through care and well-being. Number 2, improving health and focus, supporting healthier, more energized and productive employees, especially when we're dealing with our customers. Number 3 is building connections and reducing stress, so fostering teamwork, reducing burnout, and promoting work-life balance to create a positive workplace culture. And lastly, motivating through achievement and rewards. Encouraging participation through goal setting and incentives enhances job satisfaction and retention. That's all I've discussed there is covered in the wellness strategy that we've built and are continuing to move forward. I now wish to provide some detail on the Employee Assistance Program on the next slide. The Employee Assistance Program provides voluntary, free, confidential, short-term, focused resources for all our employees, as well as their immediate family members, which is often not recognized by our employees. We're constantly promoting that. It's not just for you, but it's for your immediate family members. The program has 6 licensed clinicians who are also certified substance abuse professionals. And the program provides crisis interventions, supervisory consultations, substance abuse services, return to duty evaluations, fit for duty evaluations, absenteeism evaluations, outreach visits, and tailored trainings. You can see how extensive the program is. I just want to outline some of the elements of it in a bit more detail. So in March of 2024, the Employee Assistance Program began conducting outreach visits to all of the bus and rail divisions. That's because these groups use their services most often. The purpose of the outreach visits is to educate employees and management as well, up to twice a year. Dr. S.B. Smith's team works closely with Metro Transit Police and Chief Anzalo, focusing on the mental well-being of officers. This is a real focus for both of them. Metro Transit Police is a certified active bystanders in law enforcement agency, commonly known as ABLE. In partnership with Georgetown Law Center, this program teaches officers how to intervene in situations where misconduct is occurring, helps officers to prevent mistakes, and misconduct promotes officers to prevent mistakes and misconduct, and promotes officers' wellness and health. And every police officer at Metro receives initial and yearly training on this program. Also, Mental Health First Aid is a national program that teaches officers how to recognize and communicate with people experiencing a crisis. There is also significant focus on self-awareness and mental well-being. Every police officer receives this training as well as crisis intervention training. Metro Transit Police has a robust peer support team that operates under national guidelines, providing support to officers that experience crisis, are involved in critical incidents, or exposed to general stressors. Every police officer is assessed biannually for depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and PTSD. This really is at the forefront of how Chief Anzalo and Dr. Amy S.B. Smith manage the well-being of their officers, and this far surpasses sort of state requirements. Open to all employees is the I've Got Your Back support program, which is for employees returning to work after experiencing a traumatic work-related incident. The group meets every Wednesday for 90 minutes and offers a safe, confidential, and empathetic environment where employees can share their experiences, fears, and anxieties. Led by trained counselors, the group provides a supportive environment that promotes resilience while helping employees regain their confidence after a traumatic event. This not only improves their well-being in that moment, but it helps the organization by getting those individuals back to work. But from the feedback received on that program, what's most interesting is people comment on how it improves their personal lives as well, which is really encouraging. There have been 232 employee participants in 2024. And I wish to close by mentioning 2 specific objectives of Dr. S.B. Smith's team in 2025. Under the Employee Assistance Program, the team will launch a critical incident response plan, which will provide more crisis intervention resources at scale, at speed, and in a coordinated fashion to assure the well-being of employees involved in extreme situations such as a serious accident, a mass shooting, or workplace violence, natural disasters, etc. The critical incident response plan will utilize a critical incident stress management approach based upon psychological first aid and resilience enhancement, and interventions will be catered to the nature and severity of the incident. The resources will not only support employees in the moment, but also improve organizational resilience and also help those impacted return safely and promptly to work. The second point for this upcoming year is that we'll be rebranding our Employee Assistance Program. That will ensure our workforce understands the full value and service offerings of the program and their immediate family, normalizing behavior and erasing the stigma that can be associated with seeking mental health support. So that concludes my update and comments on the two parts to this, the end of this presentation, which is about the wellness strategy and also the employee assistance program. Thank you.
Thank you. Want to invite questions from anyone on the board or anyone online? Ms. Proctor.
Hi, good morning, team. Thank you so much for this amazing presentation. You know, this sits right with me in everything that I love to do and love to discuss with regards to the whole person that we're looking at. I just had one comment. Obviously, thank you so much for this presentation and for the work that you're doing in helping to support the whole person that is working and serving this community with Metro and WMATA. My question is with regards to the employee outreach program. Could you just briefly discuss how that program is accessed? I know that people may know, but they might not know that they can get them. In what ways can people access this program and receive those services?
We try and make it as accessible as possible. Often, proactively, immediately after an incident, a manager provides information to the individual who can either make a telephone call or they can walk in to the facility, Dr. Amy S.B. Smith's facility at New Carrollton. But ultimately, that's a 24/7 number, staffed 24/7 by professionals. We also engage with the union when an incident occurs to ensure that yet another possible line of access a channel of access is opened up, but ultimately through management, through a telephone line at 24/7, through the union, or by walking into the facility at New Carrollton.
Thank you, that's great. I just want everybody to know that it is accessible by phone, online, and in person. So whatever way that we can meet you where you are, that there is a pathway to that. I had a secondary clarification. When you say with regards to crisis interventions, I know that we do a lot with regards to also suicide awareness. That is also, just clarifying that that is also intersected with regards to crisis intervention.
Yes, and this is a function, capability that Chief Anzalo has. We have crisis intervention officers that are able to actually patrol the system, can be deployed to certain incidents, whether it's a customer potentially, behaving erratically or in a concerning manner, or having a mental health crisis, or displaying tendencies that show evidence that a mental health crisis may occur. They're available in the system and deployable. We also have signage around the system in critical locations, advising people who are vulnerable, who maybe are contemplating suicide, providing them with national independent numbers that they can contact for advice and support.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And that actually leads into my last and final question with regards to health awareness campaigns. I know that these are constantly ongoing. Can you just speak a little bit to how we address those as well?
So there's always a challenge for airspace in communicating with our employees. And also, though, we're constantly trying to overcome a challenge between communicating between management and the front line. So what Dr. Amy S.B. Smith's team does is pursue various different types of communication, whether it's the fairs I mentioned, whether it's setting up a table in a break room in a bus division, or setting up a table in headquarters, or sending email communications, or providing information to managers and supervisors to brief during safety briefings. There are various ways that a communication is pushed out to our organization, but ultimately we defer to the experts, and Christy Benson and her team manage employee communications, so we defer to her and take advice and make sure that we're coordinated and not overlapping with conflicting information. So that's not necessarily a linear answer, but it's multiple
Not a linear
different
process. So yes, thank you.
multiple different ways of doing it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Someone.
I think Director Smedberg might have a question.
Good morning. A question, good morning, Chair. A question for Ms. Dickerson. Sherry, part of your presentation, you talked about low performance and morale. Can you go into a little more detail there and what's being done to address that?
So performance and morale from this perspective is really based around the vacancy rate and the number of vacancies that we're attempting to fill at this point creates additional stress on employees who are at work every day trying to do their responsibilities, but having to do double duty because of the high vacancy rate. And so I think a lot of the stress and low morale at this point is based around that.
And is
I feel like I'm talking
management
to the voice of
or
God.
the directors in those departments, what are they doing to help address and work with employees?
So we've been working hard to backfill the vacancies that exist. Our frontline staff, a lot of those vacancies for as far as bus operators, rail operators, we become challenged in filling those positions because they have to go through training classes. And so we currently have, I believe, almost 100 employees somewhere in the training consortium that should be finishing soon. But each class is typically around 60 employees. So even if we could hire more employees faster, we can't class them up fast enough. So trying to backfill those positions has been a bit of a challenge. And that kind of is seen throughout the organization and other high volume classifications.
Sherry, here, let me ask my question a little differently. What about the employees who are there experiencing this stress or low morale? What are we doing for them?
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. So for those employees, you know, I think what we're trying to do is make sure that we have town halls. We do surveys with those employees. We've created employee resource groups to give them an outlet to kind of voice their concerns. At the town halls, they're able to speak freely with the GM about what their concerns are and how we can better serve them. We've also tried to make sure that we have things in place, like we have the gyms in most of our facilities. We have access to EAP if it's a overwhelming kind of stressful situation for them. So we try to put other things in place so that we are able to make sure that our employees feel supported and are able to perform their duties without feeling too overwhelmed.
And Mr. Smedberg, just to add from our perspective, and it really builds on board member Martin Proctor's question, we now have a pretty robust set of resources and programs to provide our employees with assistance. And it was my last point, really. Our challenge is overcoming the stigma and the resistance to use those services. And so that's about trust, it's about knowledge, and it's about creating an environment where it's okay and it's encouraged. We've still got some work to do there. That work is to be done with the union. It's to be done with supervisors and managers. But ultimately, we recognize that stress, especially over the last 4 years, and we've just reported to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration our figures for 2024. Stress is a significant number when it comes to injuries as a percentage, not as volume, as a percentage. And so stress is very much on the forefront of Teresa Impostato's mind and Dr. Amy Espy Smith's. And really, it's not the resources at this point, it's the access and building the trust and increasing usage.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both. I mean, low morale could be caused by multiple factors, obviously, but thank you for providing additional detail.
I have a couple questions, just clarification questions. So first of all, thank you very much for the presentation. It seems like we're trending in a better direction, which is great. I just want to clarify, when will we get an update on some of the numbers that were shared that are not currently on the screen, but by department? Because obviously in such a large organization, I'm guessing there's a significant difference in satisfaction, stress, all the different metrics that you're measuring, even time to hire in major departments. My assumption is that those things are getting tracked, correct?
Yes, they are. And there will be another survey that's done at the end of this fiscal year, and that data will be diced and sliced in several different directions, as well as our human capital data is being viewed from the department level as well. It's a little manual right now. We're looking forward to our ERP system that will allow us to more easily create those types of reports, which should be in place at the end of the summer of this year.
And also, could you please speak to what, if any, are the risks of the pace of backfilling the vacancies, some of the stress, and what is being done to alleviate or anticipate, do something different so that those risks they're either lowered or no longer continue?
Yeah, so I think stress and morale are probably the biggest risks as far as the employees are concerned. Obviously, from an organizational standpoint, it's about resources. And so making sure that we have enough operators, obviously, so that we don't have to drop trips if people are out ill, and making sure that we have a robust process in place, even for our police officers, trying to make sure that we stay on pace with hiring those individuals, as well as all of our other roles, positions within our communication command center have also been a challenge. Dispatchers, we're in high competition for dispatchers across the region. And so we've taken a second look at how we hire for those roles, and we'll be looking forward to seeing some return on those efforts.
Thanks. I just want to note that I agree with the general manager that one of the major factors for some of these numbers is because of the hiring freeze, but my understanding is that there's other systemic issues such as upgrading from paper to like a more of a resource management system, but there may be other systemic factors, and I'm inviting you to tell us what they are and what we as a board can do to support or to have a discussion to be able to support the team in improving some of these numbers.
Sure. I'll make a comment on that, Chair. No, I appreciate your comment. So my take on where we are, like, I mean, I think most board members know, I and the senior team are on the system every day. We have, as Sherry mentioned, enormous amount of town halls, large and small. I get emails and phone calls from people, staff at all levels throughout the week. So I think we have a pretty good sense of the general population of our staff. Some departments would get maybe more or less touch points than others. Some of it, there's more connection with unions than others. So overall, I think the general feel at the organization is actually pretty good. People are very proud of wearing the M. The reputation of the organization is back. I think people feel a lot of pride in that. I think, we just got to be eyes wide open. The budget stress of last year, while our world now, we forget how stressful last year's budget was, really did impact the organization. Not only did we do a hiring freeze, as Sherry mentioned, and that put an enormous stress on her team and the training teams, but a lot of people couldn't backfill roles. And then people are really carrying a lot of extra load. Also, we've asked all of our employees to take no merit increase for the year. And most people, I think, do relate how they get compensated in morale in some fashion. So I think there was a pride and understanding of how the sacrifice of taking no merit increase was important for the organization, but it doesn't alleviate the hit to most people personally when they actually do that. So I think the big theme I keep taking away, and we keep talking about as an organization, is this predictability. The more predictable everything is, the less general stress there is, and the better we can manage both resources, assets, all of those types of things. So not to be over generic, but I do think this year we're going to be in a little better spot because the budget is, I don't want to say normal, but certainly a lot less stressful. And we have a good outlook for the year after as well. And now we'll have all of our labor unions under contract, and we'll have 4 to 5 years of predictability. So then it allows us to work in with a lot of the stuff Jamie is talking about, where employee resource groups, things like that, and Sherry mentioned. I do want to highlight the last part that Sherry showed on her slide, though, which is we were making really good progress on reducing time to hire. It went up, and now it's turning back down, and it's actually turning down harder than the progress we made before. So I just want to recognize Sherry, and Dreda is in the back, a few of her team members. I think we're finally getting our process a little more, to your point, digital, and we're willing to kind of bust some stuff up here that maybe some legacy process stuff. So I do think we're going to continue to see both between ERP and just Judd's supportive effort on digital modernization, another year to 2 years of improvement across HR, procurement, all of our process management things. And I think the other thing is on town halls, we've told everyone in the budget, there is merit increases this year. And some of the town halls that got actually claps. So I think all of these things together, so sort of a little one, but it's this holistic approach that Sherry and the team are really leading.
Sounds good. Thank you for adding that detail. And just for the next time when you come back, just to reiterate, it would be helpful to see some of the numbers by again, department, because I mean, again, for such a large organization, inevitably, there's certain areas that probably could use more support than others.
Yes.
And I know for me personally, among the metrics that caught my attention that we don't need to get into now is about like staff perception of collaboration, of empowerment, of process efficiency. And I think that it would be helpful to know, again, and the next time you all come back, what is being done to address some of those numbers that could stand to be improved. Thanks. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. With that, with no further business to come before the executive committee, we stand adjourned. And I'll turn the floor over to Director Martin Proctor to begin the Safety and Operations Committee meeting.
Oh. Everybody get seated? Thank you, Chair Santos. Should I move that back? Felt like there was an echo. Welcome to this meeting of the Board Safety and Operations Committee. I am Camila Martin Proctor. I am the Vice Chair. That's not me. I'm the Vice Chair. Colonel Drummer, Mr. Drummer, is unavailable to be with us today, so I will be chairing this meeting in his stead. I want to thank everybody for their patience with me as we move forward. Thank you, team. I think I have a good mic now. You may see me look up and down and back and forth. That is because I live with low vision and my eyes may dart, but I am looking at you. I am being directly in contact with you, and I appreciate your grace in understanding that. Our first order of business today is to approve the agenda. Today's agenda is in front of us for approval. Are there any objections by members of the committee to the agenda as amended? As presented? Okay, hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Our next order of business is approval of minutes. We have the minutes of our November 21st meeting in front of us. Are there any objections to the minutes as presented? Okay. Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved and presented. Okay, thank you. Closing out those two items, we will move forward. We have two important updates on today's agenda. First, we'll have an update on Metro's Safety Management System, or SMS, and the milestones that the program achieved in 2024. Next, we'll receive an update on Metro's public safety initiatives, specifically the accomplishments under the Metro Transit Police Department's problem-oriented policing strategy and its work with regional law enforcement partners. I will now turn the floor over to Chief Gonzalo to begin our presentation.
Chair Martin Proctor, Chair Santos, and members of the board, good morning. Chief, Mr. Johnson, and I will be providing our annual update on public safety initiatives. We'll cover a variety of initiatives, both ongoing and proposed, as well as a detailed review of crime stats on the system. With that, I'll turn it over to Chief Gonzalo.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Clark, Mr. Dwyer, Jamie. So for this year, if you look, this is our objectives: safety and security, compassion, crisis intervention, community outreach, and then our problem-oriented policing strategy. Get the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, all right. So these are some of our strategies for problem-oriented policing. So regional partnerships and increased special police officers, point-of-entry policing, more fair enforcement on bus routes, our crisis intervention team, and community outreach. We started truancy enforcement in 2024. We noticed a lot of juvenile crime occurring during the day, particularly robberies. So we did focus on that. And then we did start in 2024 a balanced and restorative justice program through our community outreach folks. And as you all know, we did start our training academy for MTPD. Some of our indicators are obviously, crime rate reductions through citations, assaults. Our closure rates are still above national averages. They're really high. Introduced more SPOs to do train checks. We still have the body-worn cameras for transparency. And then we have we made some strides with crisis intervention and then with our outreach and engagement. So if you look at our crisis intervention, made contact with at least 23,000 people. Not all of them were in crisis. These are just folks that the crisis intervention team will see out on the system as well as employees, because we do support through the police department, our CIT folks, any type of major traumatic event that our employees may go through. We make our folks available to help with that. We did over 1,970 customers that were experiencing crisis. We did divert into resources. We still get a high rate of people refusing resources, but I think this is significant because it shows that we're going in the right direction. And we did 15,000 trains, 2,400 buses, and buses this year is a priority. We want to get on more of the bus routes this year than we did last year. And then, the platform checks is what we're doing. And if you can see, New Carrollton is actually our highest incident station. Probably a couple of reasons for that. There's been a lot of increased activity at New Carrollton, particularly on the 450 side. We're seeing a lot more drug activity on that side, which we've taken some enforcement efforts on. But also the Amtrak stations there. There's a lot of people that congregate there throughout the day and the evening, to be honest with you. And then, of course, L'Enfant Plaza, we still, even though it's a hub station, we still get a lot of folks that come through L'Enfant Plaza as well. And then if you look at our youth programs, our Youth Advisory Council, we started a couple of years ago with about 15 or 20 kids. We've got it almost up to about 100 kids coming to that, so that's been fairly successful. We still participate in Safe Passage with the DC Police during school hours. And that's sort of where our truancy enforcement comes in at. We did see an uptick in juvenile crime during the day. So 2024, we did make it a priority. So we returned 372 kids back to school in all 3 jurisdictions. And we've seen a significant decrease in our robbery rate, to be honest with you. And then we've started a balanced and restorative justice program. We work with the Office of the Attorney General here in the District of Columbia. So some of the juveniles that we do have contact with or, have to take into custody, this is a program where, they can work through their crime that they committed with the Office of the Attorney General, but also with us. And if they complete the program, then, the Attorney General obviously takes that, favorable consideration when they're looking at their crime. We did over 1,300 outreach events and community engagement events last year. A couple of the big ones, obviously the backpack giveaway at Fort Totten. And then, we do with bus, we do the holiday buses, as well as the, Thanksgiving. We usually go to, a rail station like Anacostia last year and did, Thanksgiving outreach over there. With Mr. Clark, Mr. Dwyer, we were able to start a cadet program. So we've hired 3. They're not kids, they're young adults. I guess they're 18. So we partnered, we were actually, Mr. Clark and Mr. Dwyer, we were able to get a grant through the state of Maryland to help offset some of our salary costs. And the program really is, and we partner with Prince George's County Community College. We're hoping to expand it in all 3 jurisdictions where they work for us, but they also go to school so they can earn at least an associate's degree by the time they're ready to turn over to be police officers at 20 and a half. So I know 3 doesn't sound like a large number, but this is the start of it. So we're hoping that we have a pretty good pipeline of kids that have graduated from high school looking for something to do, get them interested in law enforcement. And all these Youth Advisory Council, a lot of the outreach events that we do with these kids, they tie into that. So we're trying to encourage them that there's being a police officer is a good job, and it's something they may not look at, but we're trying to get them educated where they do look at us and maybe try to take that on as a career. So, we hope to have some pretty good success with that. And then, we started our first police academy here. We've obviously saved money by getting out of Northern Virginia, although Northern Virginia was very good to us over the years. Take nothing away from them, but it was time to start our own police academy. Save about $1 million a year on that. And then what the important thing is we reduced our training time. Because we have to get certified Maryland, DC, and Virginia, our academy was 39 weeks long and then 10 weeks of field training. So by the time you got hired as a police officer, the time you were certified is almost a year. So it's a long time. Most academies are 26 weeks, but most academies just deal with 1 jurisdiction. So with this, Maryland and Virginia in the district, they were able to recognize there was a lot of duplicative course instruction because each of them required basically, just as an example, constitutional law. It's the same across the country, but we had to do it for Maryland, DC, and Virginia. So there's a lot of duplicative effort there. So we were able to work through all that. So our academy, even though it's still fairly long, it went from 39 weeks to 32 weeks. And so we have 24 in there for our first class. We lost 2, but our attrition rate's usually around 10%. So we've got 22 currently. And then our problem-oriented policing, one thing with Mr. Clark, Mr. Dwyer, we've been pretty successful on is the high visibility policing. Obviously, everybody knows we had a bad stolen auto problem in 2023. We were able to do some high visibility policing, and we targeted these parking areas and garages because they were our highest incidences. And we have reduced stolen cars 60% from 2023 to 2024. I think it's still too high. I think we've got more work to do, but that's a significant decrease. And then with the local police departments, just this year we did sign Hyattsville, but we still work with Alexandria, Cheverly, Greenbelt, MTPD, and the Airports Authority, as well as allies deployed. There are 26 stations, but they ride the lines, a couple of stations out and back. So with all that said, they've patrolled over 280,000 trains. They do mark it down. We keep pretty good statistics on that. But out of all the stations that they're deployed to, between Allied, the parking garages, and the local police departments. And all those stations, we've had a 29% reduction in crime. So it's definitely paying off.
Thanks, Chief. The crime stats we'll talk about today prove positive that our point of entry policing has reduced disorderly conduct on our system. MTPD's focus on bus fare enforcement has been ongoing for several years, but intensified in December of last year. The model consists of 4 high-visibility details conducted twice a day during morning and afternoon rush hours. The details were conducted in the bus bays of selected stations and included members of MTPD, bus, rail, and the finance team. The goal of the details was to deter fare evasion and enroll eligible riders in our Metro Lift program. There were enforcement activities during these details for those who would not be deterred. The second part of the initiative involves MTPD plainclothes officers and was strictly enforcement-based. These officers rode on the bus routes and conducted fare enforcement. In these cases, the primary goal was the issuance of citations, but as with the high visibility details, if the citation was disregarded or further investigations revealed a warrant, weapon, or narcotics, an arrest was made. In both the high visibility and plainclothes enforcement, stations and routes were selected based on a combination of data, fare evasion and crime stats. Although a pause on these details occurred around the holidays based on low ridership, they commenced again in earnest the first full week of January. This type of bus fare enforcement has become part of Chief's day-to-day policing model for the agency. Go to the next one, Jamie, thank you. To support the reduction in employee assaults, we have worked on new designs for our bus operator shields to provide more protection for our operators. In 2024, the bus fleet team began testing designs from 2 manufacturers of bus operated barriers, installing them on 3 buses. With the help of operator feedback and feedback from Local 689, as well as best practices learned from other transit agencies, WMATA has decided to move forward with fully enclosed barriers. In December, installs started on 7 additional buses that incorporates feedback from the aforementioned parties. The buses will be put into service this February. Metro is moving forward with the procurement to retrofit the full bus fleet with installs starting later on this year in 2025. Also, all newly purchased buses will include fully enclosed barriers. We believe these steps put us on a path to have the most aggressive bus barrier program in the industry. Back to you, sir.
You look at this slide, this is our enforcement slide. We're up in arrests by 16% compared to 2023, and our citations are up 135%. Overall enforcement's up over 86%. And it's paid off, not only with lower crime, but I mentioned the truant enforcement. Those kids we did return back to school, and it's really not about crime per se with the kids. It's really about just keeping them out of situations where they might get hurt or in trouble. I do reference the last year we did have an unfortunate incident on the red line where a young lady was train surfing, and she was truant, and she stuck her head up and she got killed on the train. So, those types of incidents are things that Mr. Clark, myself, Mr. Dwyer think that by doing truancy enforcement, we can prevent that sort of thing from happening to kids, because they get in all kinds of trouble because they don't quite understand how all this works yet. And then these are some of the top crimes that we focused on this year in particular. So obviously we've done pretty well with auto theft. It's still too high in my opinion, but I think we're making pretty great strides there. Our aggravated assaults have come down considerably, as well as our robberies. And then simple assault is still up. We still get a lot of fights on the system, unfortunately. These are crimes of passion. People get angry and then they lash out at each other. And our assaults on police officers are still pretty high, and then destruction of property, particularly on buses, has gone down about 33%. And our indecent exposures they're down 2%. Our overall crime rate, our Part 1 crimes are down 32%. You look at quarter to quarter, we're down 39%. And then when you look at our actual crime rate, which we do by million rides, we're down 38% with that. The other good news is, shootings and stabbings are down 12% compared to what they were in 2023. So that's a good metric there. And then these are our employee assaults. These are the top bus routes. Overall, we saw a 2% increase in all employee assaults, excluding police officers. We didn't count those in there. But where we saw a reduction in bus operator assaults by about 5%, but where we saw an increase was with contractors and station managers. These are some of the areas that we've seen, particularly on bus. These are the top routes: the B2, the X2, the 70, 52, and the 92. So what we're trying to do through point of entry policing on bus as well as rail, the fare enforcement, and then really we're still doing the training with our employees on de-escalation techniques, and that training is ongoing. One tool we think that it's definitely not the end all to be all, but we think this is a tool that we could utilize to help further reduce crime, and which a lot of authorities and properties do is banning. So currently we don't have a banning program. What we can do is we do request stay away orders for that particular jurisdiction, and we don't get as many as we probably should, but that's the court's decision. And sometimes it's really just limited to maybe a station or two, or maybe a bus route. With banning, you could obviously do it throughout Maryland, DC, and Virginia. The biggest crimes that we're looking at is really for sex offenses. Even though we've had reductions in sex offenses, 33% for rape, 4% for indecent exposure, and then 24% for fouling reduced, it's still too high. And then employee assaults, like I said, they're up 2% this year. And that's something that, if you assault an employee or you commit a sex offense on Metro property, then, that's a tool that we could use to ban some of these individuals. And then our last slide here, if look at it, these are our clearance rates. These are cases that are reported to us and that our detectives and officers clear through a warrant or arrest. So aggravated assault, the national rate, the only reason why we compare it to 2023, because 2024, the FBI, they can't do it that quickly. So they don't report until 2024 stats probably won't be out till usually the summer to fall of 2025. So 2023 is the comparator that we have to use. And that's standard throughout ever since I've been a police officer. So 42% is the national rate. We're at 67%. We didn't have any homicide offenses last year. Our kidnapping, we've closed we didn't have many, but we did close 100% of them with arrests. Sex offenses, we closed 55%. If you look at the national rate, it's about 21%. We did better with destructions of property, or 20% compared to 15% nationally, and larceny offenses as well, 15% nationally, 31% for us. And then motor vehicle theft, we have increased that quite a bit. National rate's about 8%, we're at 17%. And then robbery is the big one, 27% nationally and 63% for us. So, the detectives and the officers and, all the men and women who work to support, MTPD, they've really done a good job.
Jim Martin Proctor, that concludes our presentation. I think on behalf of the GM, I do want to call out Chief Gonzalo, the command staff from MTPD, the officials and officers of the MPD, as well as FOP. Their efforts in keeping our customers and employees safe from harm on the system has had an extraordinary impact on ridership. And I think it's as telling as the excellent service we provide every day. So with that, we'd be happy to take any questions from the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, team. Are there any questions from the board at this time? Yes, Dr. Lynn.
It's great to see this slide. I know that I've brought up before that WMATA needs to highlight more the MTPD's incredible case closure rate. And so I'm really happy to see it presented in this super clear way, because this is incredibly impressive. I think in the entire time I've been on the board, this is just consistently like one of the most impressive performance statistics that I've seen. And it's something that I think should give riders a lot of comfort that, like, obviously it'd be better if like nothing bad ever happened at all. But wow, if you do something naughty on the metro, you're gonna get caught. Thanks, Chief. And thanks to the team. I do have kind of a lot of questions. So, I mean, let's just walk through this slowly. What is the current size of the crisis intervention team?
So we've got 9 crisis intervention specialists and 2 police officers, a sergeant, and then a lieutenant oversees them in another unit. So that's 11 or 12, I guess.
Okay, and then on the slide, you showed some crisis intervention metrics, but they were really more about kind of like measuring activity, volume, quantity. You alluded in your verbal remarks to feeling like there were good results this year on crisis intervention outcomes. Is that something different that you could expand on?
Yeah, I tell you, I don't want to get, well, it is kind of complicated to me. So doing crisis intervention, particularly like with drug addicted folks, but folks that are homeless or in some type of mental crisis, it's difficult because the region has a patchwork of resources.
Mm-hmm.
The 1,970 resources that were taken, to me, is a victory, even though it's a little early in our process. This is the second year that we've done it. So, for example, like some jurisdictions do have a robust, government entity that is, deals with, behavioral health, mental crisis and stuff like that. But then there are other jurisdictions that rely on NGOs and that sort of thing. So, and then doing the follow-up with the different ones just to trying to see how they've made out has proved to be difficult.
I get it. So I assume that we're internally collecting some data on, for example, like the individuals that we're interacting with.
Yes.
But there isn't even one regional database in which service providers are tracking these individuals and who's interacting with them, where they go, where they spend time.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think, if you look at the district, when they do their count every year, I think that's probably one of the better counts that we get, as far as how many people are homeless, and but this math, I mean, I don't know how they do it. They're a lot smarter than I am, but they do come up with a fairly good statistic out of that. But there's not, that I'm aware of, any type of regional government database where NGOs contribute to it, as well as, municipal or state or local government.
Yeah, I think there's like a really hard limit on what WMATA is ever going to be able to accomplish in this area, especially when there isn't a regional HMIS system. I think that it's probably worth a bigger conversation at another time about how we're defining objectives and success for the crisis intervention team, and like what the purpose of that team is, and what we want them to achieve.
No, I agree. I think we do have to refine it, because, I mean, to be honest with you, it's almost like they do a lot, not only with what we've tasked them to do, but their presence out there also deters crime. I mean, I know that's hard to measure, because, like, okay, well, how do you know that somebody was about to commit a crime and they didn't? I mean, but, they're present. Same, like, when you see any metro worker out there, their presence does have a deterrent on crime, but I agree. I think we do need to retool and kind of give them, to be fair to them, give them some clear guidance.
Yeah, I am in no way suggesting that they're not doing great work. I once met one of our crisis intervention specialists, like, spontaneously while riding the metro, and I was super impressed with him. So I think it's more that, there's a bigger regional conversation that needs to happen with this. And since WMATA is a regional entity, maybe the only regional entity, sometimes it feels like maybe there's a way that we can just help even just get people to the table to think about this problem and how it could potentially be approached differently. I'm just struck to the extent to which the way that we administer homeless services in this region is just, it's really behind the way that other regions do it. And that's not like on WMATA in any way,
But you're right. I mean, we do touch a lot of folks throughout the region, and your people are only concerned with their jurisdictions, but we see, and they do too. But I mean, we definitely see a bigger regional picture.
yeah. So I just think it's something that we can help raise awareness around, basically. You mentioned in your presentation several times truancy enforcement, and I don't really actually know what that is. So the words to me, I'm like, okay, so we are finding kids, then we take them to school.
Right.
Is there anything more to it than that, or am I like imagining the full story?
No, that's basically it. So, kids are supposed to be in school in all the jurisdictions between certain hours. When they're not, that gives the police officer, can approach them, talk to them, see where they go to school. We'll call their parent, and then we'll take them back to school and drop them off. We do a police report documenting, what occurred, and then we take them back to school.
Do we talk to the school at all? And are we sure we're returning kids to the schools they really go to?
Well, yes, because we have to meet with an administrator.
Okay.
And they have to verify that. We just don't
Right. Yeah, we're not like, have a great day.
Yeah, no, we
Okay.
do. And then and we try to track, we have a few that are habitual truants, but not a lot, but when we do catch them, a lot of them like to go to Pentagon City during the day and hang out, that sort of thing. But
I am not going to pretend that I never did that
No.
while I was supposed to be at school.
But I tell you, it does. I mean, there are a few of them that do commit crimes, but really, it's trying to keep them safe and keep them out of trouble.
Absolutely. I just want to say I thought the cadet program's really cool. I just commend WMATA. That's just absolutely wonderful. I loved hearing about that. Thank you for sharing.
No, but we hope to have pretty good success with that.
You got to start somewhere.
We do.
Okay, now let's go on to the bus operator barriers. Do we have dollars for that in the capital plan? And this is really like maybe a question not for this group. We're good on that?
Yes.
Okay. Do we know what the cost is?
No.
So we're just committed to shaking the couch cushions until it's totally covered, no matter what it turns out to cost.
No, respectfully, that we have a CIP that the board approved. It shows that is a serious topic. The slide went through that we have 2 vendors that we're doing. I just don't have an exact number to.
Oh, so we're just still costing
we have the team obviously has a rough order of magnitude, design budget, and then we're costing that out right here. You'll see we have 2 more buses coming in February. We're working with other agencies around the country to see if there's different ways to get this mousetrap done faster and cheaper. Obviously, our new procurement has it built in, but the retrofit. So this is why we're doing demonstration projects on so many things to get our engineering faster, our design coordination, and then ultimately drive our costs down to get this stuff done. So we have a placeholder for the capital to get done. We just don't know. Realistically, the way our CIP works is if we can get the cost down more, then it gets done faster. And if the cost goes up, it spreads across the 6 years or more years a little bit longer.
Okay. That's a good point. And I think that's really cool that you're working with other transit agencies, because I know this is a huge topic in other regions as well. And if there's a way to come up with a solution that can scale even bigger than WMATA itself, that's an incredible efficiency that benefits so many people. Very cool approach. Okay, I swear I'm getting close to the end of this. So now I want to talk about trends in indecent exposure. You mentioned that it's down 2%, but that is obviously like a very small reduction. That is probably like it is potato. It's basically holding steady. What are the rates of indecent exposure compared to 2019?
I'd have to get that information for you. That I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. I'd like to understand where we are this year as a 5-year trend
Okay.
for both indecent exposure and for employee assaults.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can get that information for you.
And this is, I have a rough sense of this. These metrics are in the performance report. And so and I've been reading those for 4 years. So I have a rough sense, but I just want to make sure I'm remembering correctly. And I think that those could be key stats that we want to communicate to a lot of stakeholders. In terms of indecent exposure, what do we know in terms of how many of these offenses are committed by repeat offenders?
There are quite a few that are committed by repeat offenders. You know, it's a misdemeanor, as you know. It's not like anybody's.
It's a misdemeanor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a misdemeanor offense. So, you know, if we do catch the person either in the act or through investigation, you know, we'll arrest them. But their likelihood of them being held absent any other warrant or crime or anything like that, they'll be released. Yeah, probably that day. Yeah.
Are the typical repeat offenders for indecent exposure also committing other kinds of offenses?
Yes. You know, so we have a few individuals that we think are responsible for different types of crimes. Indecent exposure being one. They like to menace people. They like to commit strong arm robberies. These folks, clearly there's something wrong with them, you know, and they're not dumb. They look for usually a female alone during the day or at night on a train car, and they will get on that train car and then they will, you know, they will do their act, or they'll menace them, or they'll scream at them. You know, I think everybody's probably encountered some of these folks out here on the rail system.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just can't feel casual about it. Like that is really scary.
It is. No, it's frightening for the victim. It's horrible.
Yeah. If this is a small number of repeat offenders, are we coordinating with other law enforcement? Like, are they like doing this outside of the transit system as well?
It's interesting that you mention that because there are a few in particular, they have relatively few crimes outside of transit systems. They seem to gravitate towards Metro. So when you look at their record, you don't see a lot like around where their neighborhood is or what they've been arrested outside the neighborhood. The vast majority of arrests are here at Metro. It really is a transit type thing. Or transit type crime. I shouldn't say it's a thing. It's a transit type crime.
That seems like a really, really important point. I will digest that. I have a similar question for employee assaults. Is that also an area where there are repeat offenders?
Not necessarily. Yeah,
Okay.
those are more anger type crimes. There are some that are in mental health crisis, and then, you know, and some of our employees, I mean, there are assaults, but you know, there's various forms of assault. So spitting's a big one, throwing an object, you know, at either the bus operator, the shield, the station manager. But it can also range from a serious assault. You know, we've seen an increase in our contractors being assaulted, particularly late at night. So it kind of runs the gamut. Haven't seen a lot of repeat offenders as far as our employees are concerned.
And spitting and throwing stuff, what kind of offense is that charged as?
It's a simple assault.
Okay.
Which is a misdemeanor.
That's also a misdemeanor?
It is, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Chair Santos.
So mine is less of a question, more just a moment of praise and thanks, which is just a thanks to Captain Donald and also Deputy Chief Nader, who allowed me to observe and as the team was doing a targeted fare evasion enforcement. It was super helpful for me, on behalf of the board, to observe how well the team, how the team approaches the problem and how they're treating it as not just more of a holistic way, which is providing resources as much as communicating. And so just thank you for allowing us to participate in that. And also, it was moving to observe as well the reflaying ceremony, which was back in December. It was just a reminder of how the officers put themselves in harm's way and subject themselves to risks. And just to say we appreciate all your work. That's it. Thank you.
Mayor Klein?
Thank you. I just wanted to, sorry. I just wanted to say thank you for the work on the shields for the bus operators. And I guess highlight the fact that this isn't just about this presentation. It actually also is about the presentation we had in the executive committee about employee stress, mental health, because being a bus operator is a very stressful job. And one of the solutions that has been discussed in the industry for many years is just a physical barrier. And it's actually a little, I'm sure there's technical issues and making sure that it's safe and whatever has to be done, but it has taken a long time for the industry to kind of get to the point of getting these in place in buses. I appreciate the work that's going into this because I think it'll, help not only with the safety for the employees, which has a benefit to the agency in terms of morale and retention, but to the passengers on the buses as well. Is there a timeline of any sort in terms of when we've got hundreds and hundreds of buses, so this is, I'm not expecting it overnight, but I'm just curious what it looks like in terms
So
of
we have shields on all the buses we use, Director Klein. This new kind of prototype, as the general manager alluded to, we don't quite have that nailed down. The fleet team is working extremely hard, and also to the general manager's point, we're dealing all the time with our other agencies, and a lot of the discussions of late with places like Toronto, New York, MATA, BOT have really surrounded kind of bus procurement, but it's really, those kind of contacts have really been helpful with regards to issues like this as well. So when I'm kind of stating that I think we'll have the best program in the country, it's based on staff dealings with other properties. So I think we're probably a little bit of time away from having something concrete, but that should be in short order, and I'm sure we can provide an update at the right cadence going forward.
we have the one in the top right? But
We
there's
have shields on all our buses. What we're really going for is an enclosure. Is something that is really more like traditionally you'd see, although it would be clear, kind of like a train operator is secured.
Right, great. I think that's going to be a big improvement, and I appreciate your work on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Board Member Letourneau?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking for a minute about the banning concept. First of all, I've long felt that we should have this policy in place, which is common on transit systems. Obviously, we did explore this several years ago, and ultimately we're not able to proceed with it. And I hope that outcome will be different. But if I could ask, I don't know if it's general manager or any of you gentlemen, what would kind of be next steps in being able to move forward with that? What type of engagement are you looking for? And from a mechanics standpoint, how does this move forward?
Yeah, well, thank you, board member. I appreciate the question on that. So I think for us, we wanted to go through where we were holistically with public safety, and I appreciate the comments. I think the chief and his team making significant strides. This quality of life issue is kind of that thing that is really out there that, quite frankly, we need a tool beyond the tools that we have today. I personally have run into people in the system. I get emails from women that have been victimized. It's just a horrible experience, and it's preventable if we can keep people off the system. As the chief mentioned, some of, especially on the exposures, are repeat offenders. So what we were hoping is to bring this awareness, get any conversation here from the board of just directionally, if the board feels that this is something you'd like to move directionally forward with. We're doing some peer analysis we could bring back, probably through a memo, and then we can have a deeper conversation, which is kind of just apple to apple, and nothing is apple to apple in our world, but a little bit of like other agencies, what's going on. And then some type of draft process. We need an adjudication process that Patty, as our general counsel, could, is kind of thinking through framing up, because there needs to be some way for someone to be able to appeal that process, obviously. So what we would, if the board is giving, tacit, for lack of a better, tacit, yes, please bring back more work, we could bring that back next month, and then, then the board could have consideration on that, and then, in the next couple months, if the board feels that this is something they want to move forward with. But I would say that would be about the general process we would go through.
Okay, thank you. Well, I certainly do. I would like to see that work done. And I hope that we can have a good community conversation about this to really make it a safer system.
Thank you.
That's very unfortunate about my hat. Oh, well. I also would like to see this done. Let's continue the conversation. To me, this is actually like not just a quality of life issue. This is just like a fundamental like safety, security, integrity issue. This is about protecting some of the most vulnerable people who are in the WMATA system, which are our employees and women. And I think that this is something that we need to get our hands around. I want to see more data in terms of where we are on incident trends. But if we know that this is going on and we know who is doing this, we have an obligation to do something about it.
I think the staff conversation with the union, I think would be very supportive of that. The staff, I think, holistically would be very supportive, and I know that the police department would be as well. So we'll take that as directionally, go do that additional amount of work, bring back to the board for some type of policy consideration around both the data and kind of proceduralize what that could look like.
Yeah, let's start workshopping how we get on top of this.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions at this time? Okay. I did have two clarifying points with regards to the continuing conversation with regards to the banning of individuals that are committing assaults and crimes on our system. We are definitely moving forward with making sure that we have a holistic approach, looking at best practices across the nation and making sure that we involve the voices of individuals that represent underserved populations, specifically with the ACLU, and making sure that those organizations are also at the table so that we are not violating anybody's civil rights with regards to moving forward to having a safe and robust system. I did have a question with regards to clarification on our, it's called the CAY, the Community Youth Advisory Council. I think it is an amazing program. I had the privilege of being there for, I believe it was the holiday activity, right, with Jose. And I would love if there would be a possibility to have a report come back from this amazing program, maybe with some alumni feedback, maybe with some of our amazing team to kind of put that on as it moves forward. Is that something that we could see?
Oh, certainly.
Yes? Excellent. Thank you so much. Secondary clarifying question. As a law enforcement family, I am extraordinarily excited about the cadet program. Max out, how many can we get trained up and on?
Well, we'd look to do it every year. So we've started, we have 5 funded. So we've got 3 because the cadet program, they'll do everything that an initial police applicant will do except for a polygraph. So when they turn 20 and a half, you still have to go through a background process and then they have to take a polygraph.
Right.
But at 18, there's probably not a whole lot to polygraph them about, to be honest with you. So, so they'll start out and they'll get, 2 years of education under their belt, hopefully in AA. And as we grow this, it's really, I tell you, one of the biggest struggles that we have as a lot of other police agencies is getting people that want to be police officers. So
Okay.
our recruiting is really,
It's hard.
everybody's is, it's difficult.
Right.
But this is a way to get kids interested in law enforcement and then get them in the pipeline where they're in a police agencies. I mean, they're doing more administrative support work, but they get an overview of every aspect of the police department while going to school. And we get something out of them, they get something out of it. And then when they turn 20 and a half, hopefully they'll want to choose us as a career and then turn over as police officers. So, I mean, I obviously I don't see us getting as big as DC's, but DC's been doing it probably since like 1931. So I mean, they've got like 100 police cadets.
Okay.
So, but if we could get 15, 20, I think we'd be in pretty good shape doing it.
Okay, well, you, speaking on my behalf, have my full support. And let's go for big swings. I think that we can definitely go as big as DC. I think that if we market and approach this appropriately and get some more intersecting community colleges involved, that this program could be amazing. As I said, as a law enforcement family, I think that is in perfect direction that we're going in, and I appreciate this program immensely. Did you have any other comments?
I do not, Director. You probably saw me considering it. I think it's something the chief and the team are really passionate about. And I think like anything else that the police department is involved in, it'll get better as it goes along.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other comments or questions from my fellow board members? All right. In closing out, I'm going to just channel Colonel Drummer and say immensely that this was, once again, another wonderful and comprehensive presentation report, that the data has come down and shows that we are moving in the right direction and that you have our full support going forward. And thank you so much for the presentation.
Madam Chair, thank you. Thank you all.
I guess we're going to be moving forward now with the annual safety update with Mr. Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Martin Proctor. And firstly, apologies. I'm sorry you have so much time with me today. It's not going to drive up participation in the board meetings. I apologize.
I enjoy hearing. I'm especially going to enjoy this report.
Okay. Here today, I provide an update on Metro's progress with safety. Importantly, this is not about the safety department, but the whole agency making significant and steady progress to maturing the safety management system, or SMS. SMS is the strategic systems-based approach we're implementing to improve the way we identify hazards or things that can cause people harm, the way we assess the risk those hazards pose, the likelihood or severity of harm, and the way we mitigate or reduce risk to make it less likely these things will cause harm to our customers or employees. SMS is not new or unique to transit. Other industries, such as the automotive, aviation, mining, and nuclear industries, have been pursuing excellence in this area for many years, and it is not new to Metro, as you know. We established our intent and plan in 2020 after the FTA laid out requirements for transit agencies to adopt SMS. But Metro is now maturing our SMS capability, and while there remains huge opportunity to grow, Metro is without doubt a leader in the industry in North America. Service excellence is only possible if our service is safe and getting safer. In this presentation, I'll cover first some programmatic progress we've made with SMS and then place Metro's safety performance in some context with other transit agencies in the US. I open with a rather intimidating and overwhelming slide. The slide is not intended to be read word for word, but rather provide you with a sense of how we've approached SMS at Metro. Members of the board and the public who have been paying attention to this will recognize this diagram. It's been used and updated annually since 2020. This is the 2024 version, and it's the guiding document that lays out the initiatives we have planned in order to deliver SMS and represents the pathway to maturity. And this slide is the latest, updated iteration of the plan for this calendar year and beyond. As you can see, it's ambitious. There is a lot happening, there is a lot being achieved, and this requires significant coordination and communication across all departments at Metro, which was the point I made in the safety contact. Safety is only possible if we're coordinating and collaborating internally and externally. Now I'm going to dive into more detail in the areas that you see on the left and the bottom of the diagram, which are key elements of SMS: safety policy and promotion, safety risk management, and safety assurance. So we'll start with safety policy and promotion. So safety policy, quite simply, is how we formally set expectations and standards across the agency. And safety promotion is how we educate our workforce, communicate SMS principles, and ultimately change the way we act, think, and feel about safety. So first of all, thank you for the board's approval in the fall for this year's agency safety plan. This plan lays out the nuts and bolts of how we are delivering SMS. In 2024, we received more engagement than ever before with the unions to create a better product. We have continued to grow our partnership with MITRE, a renowned non-profit expert in SMS, improving the management of safety data and leading a groundbreaking effort to better understand the root cause of bus collisions by pooling data with other transit agencies, which replicated what's called a data trust. It's been effectively used by aviation and automotive industries. They also successfully worked with us, MITRE that is, to finalize our safety culture assessment due to be delivered later this year. We've revised multiple agency-wide policies to include just culture principles, which is a step towards creating a culture where employees feel empowered to raise issues. They know that they will be treated fairly, and they know that the root cause and learning are the central reasons of asking questions and not punishment. In 2025, we are designing a just culture toolkit for managers to apply those principles to their own teams in order to build fairness and trust and ultimately improve the safety culture. We delivered the first all-agency SMS training to explain concepts to all employees, and with over 90% completion rates, we are proud that everyone has a baseline understanding of the concepts that they need to understand. And employees are now being formally recognized for demonstrating stellar SMS behaviors, including good reporting and great collaboration to solve problems and mitigate risks. In addition, in 2025, after successful union negotiations in 2024, we'll be formalizing fatigue management requirements to reduce fatigue-related incidents. We'll develop training to increase the foundational knowledge and buy-in of staff. Advanced SMS training is due to be published. Basic just cultural awareness training is on the books, and training to improve employees' understanding of environmental and occupational safety and health regulations and requirements is planned. So now, if we move to the second bucket, which is safety risk management milestones. Safety risk management is the set of procedures and specialist teams that work together to systematically identify the right hazards and risks and ensure they are mitigated. So let's understand what progress we made in 24 and what's planned in 25. So in 2024, we built the job hazard analysis program that assesses every task conducted by operations, maintenance, and construction teams to ensure the tasks are safe and protections are in place. This is now being rolled out across multiple departments in 25, and we'll look to harness the valuable data gathered through this process to inform other decisions across the operation. We have a roadway worker protection program in place that reduces the risk of employees being struck by trains. This is clearly a top priority for the agency. We completed a thorough hazard review in consultation with frontline workers and made 2 significant sets of changes to the rules in 2024. More improvements are planned, and we're partnering with industry leaders to simplify and enhance our training in 25. A continued area of focus is bus collisions. Both their volume and seriousness warrants constant attention. We formalized our efforts last year in a more structured risk-based plan to improve safety on the buses, and will work in 25 to initiate a review of procedures and standards. Safety committees are the vital organs of the SMS system, empowering frontline and management employees to own their hazards and reduce risk. We have spent time enhancing the quality, standards, and outcomes of these committees, as well as placing dedicated safety risk coordinators in departments where they're tasked solely with hazard management. building on 2024's progress, publishing multiple new and revised occupational safety and health programs, which protect our employees in areas like fall protection or exposure to certain elements like lead or asbestos. We intend to proactively partner with federal programs under the Occupational Safety and Health Administration to enhance our practices and standards. And finally, the Incident Management Framework launched 18 months ago set new standards of how we manage incidents as an agency and in coordination with jurisdictional fire and police departments. To include a safety and security summit for the region hosted by Metro, the next 12 months are a chance to tweak procedures and enhance training and performance to manage incidents even better. Again, that goes to the point I was making in the safety contact earlier. We play a critical role in the region and coordination training is key. Safety assurance is the set of processes for monitoring and overseeing safety performance to ensure mitigation measures are working or improved as needed. Compliance checks are an example of safety assurance, whereby supervisory staff check frontline employees are following procedure. Led by Mr. Dwyer, the Chief Operating Officer, Metro has formalized a robust compliance program in 2024, proactively identifying and closing safety gaps. Our message, I should say, to employees in 2024 was report, report, report. We must know about the hazards in order to mitigate them. Enhancements to our voluntary reporting program has resulted in an unprecedented number of safety hotline reports from employees in 2024, and that's over 500. The more cohesive and complete our data set, the better we will understand our risks. In 2024, we put significant effort into collating data from disparate sources like employee health data, environmental compliance, and safety inspections, making the data accessible. Our task in 25 is to ensure access and usability and start to shift our analysis to leading rather than lagging indicators. Investigations are the opportunity to identify root causes of incidents and learn lessons. Safety investigations collaborate better than ever before with different departments to gather the right information, openly discuss solutions, and track actions through to completion. In 2025, we will educate employees more on their role in the process, promoting again the just culture principles. In an effort to be best in class, alongside many other agencies from other industries, Metro initiated the Emergency Management Accreditation process in 24 and plans to make significant progress in this endeavor in 25. In this vein, we've launched a formal emergency preparedness training program for employees and enhancing an already extensive training program for jurisdictional fire and police responders. This concludes my update on the programmatic progress we've made with SMS, and now I wish to place Metro's safety performance in the context of other transit agencies in the US. So how did we do this? We selected the 8 most similar transit agencies in North America by size and mode. We analyzed key metrics over the last 5 years from the National Transit Database, which is a database to which agencies must report their safety performance data. And we normalized the results per 10 million vehicle revenue miles, so we're comparing apples to apples. So let's take a look at the first slide of 3, covering Metro bus safety performance compared to other similar agencies. Each graph represents a specific metric. The blue block represents the range of the 9 agencies as a total, as a whole, and that includes Metro. And the important line is the dark blue line, which plots Metro's individual performance. While we can see that Metro is around average for the number of collisions, Metro bus performs better than average for all injury types, namely cyclists or pedestrians, customers aboard the bus, and employees who get injured. With clearly work to do to reduce the likelihood of collisions and reduce assaults on our operators, as we heard from Chief Anzalo, this paints a very encouraging picture. And now let's look at Metro Rail's safety performance for key safety measures. While performing around average for employee injuries, it is notable that Metro Rail is leading the industry with respect to collisions, derailments, and customer injuries. In a high-risk operating environment, I would argue these results demonstrate the benefit investing in a sound infrastructure, maintaining our equipment, and pursuing the systematic approach of SMS, as I've just described. And finally, and importantly, Metro Access. We have fewer data points for Metro Access to reference because of the way the data is collected from the other agencies, but we see here a strong performance again, with collisions slightly better than average and the customer injury being one of the lowest in the country. Repeated engagement with operators and progressive contract management philosophy ensures a strong safety performance here for Metro Access. And so here I conclude my comparison of Metro with other similar transit agencies in the US. Overall, from the general manager down, there is no room for complacency when it comes to safety at Metro. It's the only way to deliver deliver service excellence is to deliver safe service, and the effort continues to continually improve for our customers' employees. That concludes my updates, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any questions from the board? Well, that being said, I do have two, just quick clarifying questions. As you know, Chair Santos, did you have a question? Oh. As you know, I am very excited about the fatigue mitigation implementation. Can we speak a little bit about that? Because I know that it's seasonal, but it's something that we are now looking to address, especially with regards to the previous presentations that spoke about a lot of people, making $1 out of 15 cents sometimes in that sense. Can we look at that just a little bit?
Yes, the first thing to emphasize is there are already fatigue guidelines in place. So it's not as if we don't monitor and fatigue and give guidance to our managers on how to manage it. The way we schedule shifts follows guidelines. And secondly, we have a pretty robust safety investigation process using software. When there is an incident, we do analysis of hours and other factors to understand if fatigue was a factor. So to believe that we're starting from scratch would be a misunderstanding. But what we've spent years doing is working with the unions through a cycle of negotiations to get absolute clarity and agreement on what those fatigue management guidelines will be across the organization. So now over the next 6 months, and this has been recommended by the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission, it's good practice, but it's challenging to get totally aligned with the unions with competing interests. So we've now overcome that hurdle and we're putting that formally into a policy. But once again, it will require extensive education and support of managers to ensure they understand it and don't fall foul of previous practices. But I wouldn't see this as a sea change. We concentrate on fatigue now very much. We're just enhancing it and bringing more clarity.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, this enhancement, as I have told you, is just like heart skip a beat. We're just moving forward and making sure that the full person is being addressed and taken care of. Secondary question. Well, I also want to first compliment you with regards to making sure that there is actually direct frontline outreach to people on the ground when collecting this data. I think that is critical. I love that that's part of the process. I know it is a best practice. I know it's really, person intensive, and it is appreciated because it gives context to these numbers. Speaking of numbers, with regards to Metro Access data collection, do we have a way forward? You mentioned that there are some minor gaps.
It's not so much our data collection, it's the National Transit Database and the other agencies. So we want to compare apples to apples. So there simply isn't as much data collection by the National Transit Database for us to compare. I think because we use contractors, which we built very strong relationships with, they're tightly managed and performance is a top priority, especially safety performance. We've actually got a lot more data than this slide suggests. And Christian Blake, I know he's presented before, he can provide a lot more data on specifics. It's the comparative issue where there's a gap.
And believe me, I do understand with regards to trying to get national data when it comes to working with accessibility and accommodations nationwide. Thank you so much for that clarification. And yes, working with Christian Blake, we know that he is one of the top gurus with regards to accommodation, accessibility, and transportation. So I know this team is doing everything to make sure that we remain the gold standard of transportation accessibility.
Absolutely.
Are there any other comments or questions from the board, from the dais? Okay. Well, seeing no other questions or comments, I want to thank you. And with no other items to come before the committee today, we stand adjourned.
Thank you, Ms. Martin Proctor. We will now hold a Finance and Capital Committee meeting. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. I'd like to move the agenda approved as presented. Are there any objections by members of the committee? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Now to the approval of the minutes. We have the minutes of our December 12th meeting before us for approval. Are there any objections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as presented. We have two items on today's agenda. The first is a part of our budget process. We are having a work session today on our capital budget. There's been a desire from the board, from our jurisdictions, to understand better some of these big components in the capital budget, especially in light of what clearly are going to be capital constraints for us in the future. We really want to make it clear to our funding partners exactly what their investment will entail and what they'll get from it and why we need it here at Metro. I want to take just a second as the team gets settled here, just to note the really considerable progress that's been made both on the operating budget, but since today we're talking about the capital budget in terms of cost savings. And what we're really highlighting today are some of those big programs that some of which have some changes in the approaches from previous years to help drive efficiency and take advantage of certain circumstances that have presented themselves. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mr. Webster to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Letourneau and members of the board. I'm Tom Webster, Chief of Planning and Performance at Metro, joined by Andy Off, Chief of Infrastructure. We have a brief presentation here this morning. I'll start with just a reminder for the board and our partners and the public about the structure of our capital program. So it is our Metro's capital program is aligned with and guided by our strategic transformation plan. And importantly, we follow and have implemented really a best practice here where we identify any and all long-term capital investment needs over a decades-long view, and a lot of those are conceptual, but form the basis for development of our capital program. So we have a long-term inventory of capital needs that are really concepts and ideas. We have a 10-year capital plan that is not financially constrained, but is all of the work that Metro could accomplish and in some ways should accomplish in that 10-year horizon. We then have a financially constrained 6-year capital program and financially constrained annual budget. And one of the reasons this is important is the level of granularity, specificity, and knowledge that the Metro team and others have about projects is is a spectrum. So if something is a long-term concept or an idea, generally we don't have scope, schedule, cost estimates for those types of concepts. If something is a project in delivery, it does have a scope, a schedule, and cost estimates for execution. Metro's made, and the region have made considerable progress in maintenance practices, investments through the capital program, and rehabilitation and replacement of our assets. But the financial constraints that are looming threaten that progress. On the right-hand side of this slide, you see our summary of our FY 26 to FY 31 6-year capital program, as well as the debt service that's required to fund and implement that. So overall, an investment profile of about $10.5 billion, with a total expense of about 12.5 over the 6-year period. Next up here is just a recap of our proposed 6-year capital program. So that $10.5 billion of investments, and presented here with the 6-year cash flow by the traditional categories that we group our capital investments by, and that's in alignment with some of the governing agreements with our jurisdictional funding partners, this structure of Metro's capital program. But you see essentially the profile of investment over the next 6 years. Importantly, because of those financial constraints, we have a number of mission critical or required investments for the state of good repair, safety and reliability of the system that are either unfunded or underfunded in the 6-year CIP. So we've discussed these topics a number of times, but just important again to highlight that towards the second half of the upcoming 6-year period, work that the region and Metro really should be doing to reinvest in the system is currently unfunded. And these are select really key examples of those needs. As the chair mentioned at the outset, we have been very focused on identifying cost savings opportunities in our capital program, recognizing that every dollar that we can save while still delivering the scope and the performance of the program allows us to preserve resources for additional reinvestment, additional state of good repair and replacement and rehabilitation work. That means that in the current year and the previous fiscal year, we have underspent compared to the original budget, which frees up additional resources for that reinvestment. So in next month, we intend to come back to the committee and to the board with some revisions to the proposed capital program to reflect the availability of that additional capacity, updated schedules, and some opportunities to invest in some of those categories I mentioned earlier that are underfunded or unfunded in the 6-year period. The key ones, and we will be coming back with some more detail on this next month, there are opportunities to invest more in fire systems, in our high and low voltage power programs. I'll touch on that again in a moment. Our shafts and drainage, so ventilation and egress shafts and drainage, some of the critical infrastructure that's out there in the rail system, as well as our escalator program. So at the conclusion of our existing escalator replacement program or replacement contract, the current proposed CIP does not include funding to continue escalator replacement, which clearly will have a direct impact on the performance and the reliability and the availability of escalators in the future if we're not able to identify additional funding to invest. In traction power, traction power is really critical to providing the power to run trains throughout the system. Metro has 124 traction power locations that require regular maintenance and reinvestment to sustain reliability and to enable safe and reliable service. In the proposed capital program, we're investing in about 58 locations, but we are short about 280 million or 282 million of the needed investment over the 6-year period to keep traction power investments on pace. So again, if we're able to identify and reallocate resources into that, we can get more investment done in that asset group. We have made significant progress in traction power investments over the past couple of decades, both in the rehabilitation and modernization of traction power to support both, again, reliability and also ACAR train operations throughout the system. Now moving to 8000 series rail cars, we are proceeding with the 8000 series rail car investment to replace legacy rail cars with modern vehicles. We're entering the final design stage of that rail car procurement. The base order of vehicles and the first option are funded in our 6-year capital program. The base has been awarded and is underway. Option 1 for an additional 104 rail cars, while funded, has not yet been awarded. That would of course allow us to deliver service to support increasing ridership on our existing infrastructure and our existing system. All of the other options in that contract are currently not funded in the 6-year program, and there's no projected investment to acquire additional rail cars. Of course, additional rail cars are one way to improve service and expand capacity in the system. This next slide.
Hold on, Tom. So
yes.
since we're sort of in more of a workshop mode here, we've had traction power and 8000 series. Why don't we kind of just pause kind of one by one on these components, if there are any questions from members of the committee or the board, or just comments that you want to make, just so we don't have to go back and forget what we were talking about. Maybe there aren't any. Or
I was just going to say that I definitely have questions, although some of them aren't related to the particular things that are getting highlighted. So I'm perfectly fine going through the whole thing and then.
Well, why don't we see if there are any questions specifically on the slides that are in front of us, or those, either the 8000 series or traction power so far. Why don't we stop for those, and then at the end we'll do everything else. Does that make sense?
You don't want to go back to shafts and escalators?
We can. Sure.
It's way more fun looking at AKs, okay?
Okay.
Think how painful it is to save multi-millions only to have to spend it on power.
Yes.
Kind of key.
Yeah, I get it. Look, frankly, what I'd like to hear more is like the staff's recommendations. So I'm fine with continuing the presentation.
Go ahead, Ms. Klein.
Just a clarification on traction power, which I know we've talked about before, but just so everyone can hear it. So there are a few big things that you need for the rail system. You need the tracks, the trains, the signals between them, and the power to run them, as well as the people, right? We've talked a lot about the trains, the vehicles. We've talked, I guess, a little less about tracks. We've talked about advanced signaling to some extent. I know we'll talk more about that as we go forward. So power, just to make sure I understand the status of what we have, unlike some of the other things, we have the right technology now for power. What we're trying to do is expand its capacity, but we're not fundamentally trying to change the way that power is distributed, right? It's not a sort of total transformation. It's like this is not a rotary phone. This is actual what we should be using, but we need to make sure it can do what we need it to do, and it is maintained well. Is that accurate to how to think about it?
Yes, ma'am. So it is in general. I wouldn't say it's a one-for-one because obviously, the technology is more modern, oil-cooled, the water-cooled, types of things. But the same general concepts are there. There are places where we are taking advantage when we replace 40, 50-year-old equipment with bolt-on technologies that'll help us do other things related to having more capability from the control center to control field equipment. But in general, this is not an expansion or an increase in capacity. It's essentially replacing your 1970s, electrical panel in your basement with a 2025 version.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear, and it's definitely a program we need to pay some attention to because it is one of those pillars that we rely on, much as it doesn't sound exciting to talk about power. Thank you.
Mr. McAndrew.
Thank you, Chair. Slide 6, I believe, was showing all the unfunded investments. Tom, if you could go ahead and get us a percentage of what's funded versus unfunded by investment category would be great. Because I imagine we are still investing in escalator replacement as proposed. And so it'd just be good to get a better sense there.
Thank you for the question, Mr. McAndrew. So I think from it's difficult for me off the top of my head to do percentage funded in the 6-year period of each of these categories, but that's certainly something we have available and can provide to the board. I think in total, we're in the billions of dollars of unfunded needs, but by each of these categories, there are very substantial unfunded components, and then underlying investments that are occurring right now. But we're happy to provide certainly for these examples, percentage funded versus unfunded of what work could be accomplished in the 6-year period.
Thank you.
An example here of escalators where we are about 200 million unfunded in the 6-year period, in that range. So that's basically 3 years worth of escalator replacement activity not funded in the 6-year CIP. So essentially half.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I think that the point kind of is obviously some of these things have components that are funded in the CIP and some don't. So I assume there's a process to decide what's the most critical, and that's what gets whatever funding we have for that category, and then everything else kind of gets outside of it. Do we have essentially a component of the CIP, or could we have, that is sort of future fiscal year needs, where we are more specific about these things that don't or can't fit within the 6-year program?
Yes. So thank you, Chair Letourneau. In the capital program publications, we list in detail by capital need category and by capital project the projected 10-year by year investment and how much is in fact programmed in the 6-year CIP. So it's a lot of data, but certainly we can highlight examples from that for the board.
Okay. And one other question just on traction power. Is this all internal to us essentially? Do we have any issues with power availability from our power providers? And do they have any infrastructure that they need to build to support this, or is this just all internal stuff that we have to put on track and things like that?
Yes, sir. Relative to the rail system, capacity on the supplier side is not an issue at all. There are things we're doing to make our systems more effective, meaning so we can isolate power on our side. So we're installing certain technologies to enable that. Certainly, when you get into the battery electric bus side, totally different equation. But what we're talking about here, traction power on the rail side, no challenges with our providers.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get to the battery electric bus in a second. Okay. Any other questions about any of the material that we've covered so far with this presentation? No? Okay. Let's move on to the next one then.
Now we just run past the 8Ks?
Well, no, we were on 8Ks. So if you have an 8K question, go for it. Well, they already finished it, so.
Okay, so next up is our Metro training facility. As you heard a little bit earlier in an earlier committee, we have a wide range of training requirements at Metro for our 13,000 or so employees. A lot or a majority of our in-person training and hands-on training occurs at Metro's Carmen Turner facility near New Carrollton Station, where we are using a facility that was not built or designed as a training facility, but has been retrofitted over the years to meet training needs. That facility does not meet our current or emerging and evolving training requirements, and it is not up to current code and needs significant rehabilitation. We have both age issues, condition issues, and recently, or right now, we have some mold remediation activity that's happening at the facility. We have launched in recent years more comprehensive training programs for different functional areas and departments across Metro. And a lot of that is to address deficiencies and shortfalls, many of which have been identified in corrective action plans and findings through various audits. A new facility aims to create efficiencies across groups and the region, taking advantage of co-location and of different types of trainings and different availability for regional partners and other emergency management and emergency responders. Metro, recognizing this need for a modern, built-to-purpose training facility, evaluated both the existing Carmen Turner facility and our real estate portfolio across the region, and identified after that review 3636 Pensy Drive, which is actually nearby, which was originally acquired for the heavy repair and overhaul facility as the preferred location for a new training facility, essentially to maximize existing resources and existing real estate assets in Metro's control, address our current and future training needs, and then facilitate that coordination and consolidation of regional transit and emergency response related training. Part of this evaluation looked at the inefficiencies and challenges with trying to rehabilitate and restore and bring up to code and bring up to modern standards the existing Carmen Turner facility. And one of the challenges there, of course, is we have ongoing everyday training activities that would be heavily disrupted by a rebuild of that facility, and that would again add costs. So we have identified an order of magnitude investment of $100 million into the new or the preferred location. We're in the process now of developing that project. So finalizing or refining the scope of what activities will be contained in the training facility, and then moving forward with more detailed cost estimating and next steps. So I'll pause there, Mr. Chair, if there are questions on this.
Thank you. Okay. Questions on this? It's Clive.
Thinking about the opportunities for collaboration around the region, are you sort of upfront working with partners, other transit agencies, or maybe even other transit agencies that aren't part of the region per se, but other parts of Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, who knows, to see what their needs might be to sort of build it in up front and make sure that we can maybe get some help from them in terms of paying for this ultimately? Or I'm just thinking of opportunities to strategically identify partners who might be interested in helping to fund it.
Thank you for the question, Board Member Klein. A couple of sort of coordination touch points here. I think, yes, the team will be reaching out to all of our transit partners and emergency response agencies and others around the region, specifically on what we're doing here and to learn how there may be opportunities. Also through the DMV Moves process, some of the transit agencies and others participating were looking for opportunities to share services and consolidate training. So there's a venue for that conversation as well that will feed into this. As far as commercial opportunities, I think in making those contacts, we'll explore that. There may be some opportunities, but we are also constrained in the space and in the investment we can make here. So there'll be some trade-off conversations, I think.
Thank you.
Mr. McAndrew.
Just a quick question. Does the 100 million fully fund the capital construction needed here?
We are, again, thank you, Board Member McAndrew. We are pursuing this project with an intent to build the facility to the budget. So setting essentially a cap on the scope and the dollars associated with the project. If opportunities come up in the future for additional investment, that would be certainly considered. But the intent for the team here is to build to this $100 million total project cost estimate.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, my only kind of initial reaction to this was that seems a little bit low for this type of facility. So, you know, I was kind of wondering what we're leaving out, essentially.
I'll jump in on that one. There's been a robust senior executive conversation about that. So, I mean, we are doing a detailed analysis right now of what to put in this facility, right? How much technology versus how much physicality that you would do on, you know, first responder, you know, smoke incident to security, police department activity. I have a little experience. I actually led the project in Boston. We built an underground emergency training center. We took an abandoned tunnel and did this. And it's where all training at the MBTA happens today. And it's used by, quite frankly, special forces and all this other kind of stuff. So it really turned out to be a valuable asset for the region. This number, also, we're going to remember, we have this warehouse. So that is already, you know, we're not building from scratch. At the same time, we want to kind of look at this with optionality. So build to budget, but maybe have options in a contract to say, there's this area of the warehouse that is not in budget, give us a price. And then if we, you know, over the next year or two, come back with the board and say, we think this module is going to provide this type of ROI and benefit, then, hey, let's flex in $15 million more. So we're trying to, again, this constrained budget, balancing everything from the, if you will, the non-sexy water mitigation, fire alarm, power stuff, new trains, our bus program, training needs, all without really having a long-term dedicated solution past 2029, 2030. And so if we knew we had dedicated funding probably past 2030, we could then maybe go to even a higher level on this. But knowing these constraints, we're just trying to get balance. So I think we feel pretty good with this number for this year. Remember, our 6-year CIP is we execute this year, and then it's a rolling 5 that adds an extra year. So if we determine that we want to put $15, $20 million more next year, we could come back to the board. But we're going to keep looking at savings across all of our programs as well. And if we do that, we're hoping to then use those to flex into the things that we think provide the biggest value. So right now, it's about we gotta get moving. We have a facility that's not working. It's not good for our employees. You've all seen some information around we're cleaning the place up. We're spending money that way. We got this facility. We got to get moving. We need to do better training at this organization to drive performance to a much higher level.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. Anything else on this?
One more.
Sure, Ms. Clare.
What are we thinking for the CTF after this is completed.
So thank you for the question. I think that's sort of a next step here as we identify what will be housed in the new training facility and what other needs there are across the Metro's functions. I think again, CTF was not built as a it's a warehouse with modular buildings. So there are opportunities there. There are other functions beyond training at Carmen Turner as well. So the team will be doing some evaluation and project planning associated with that as well.
Okay, let's move on to the next one.
All right, next is our zero emission bus program and electric bus. We are continuing in the 6-year CIP our ongoing electrification investments, so contracts and projects already underway. We have 4 battery electric buses in service with an additional 8 expected to enter service this year. We have charging stations for those buses already installed and operational at Shepherd Parkway. Once we complete the programmed and ongoing underway work, there's no additional funding or capacity in the capital program for continued, large-scale zero-emission program investments. So those ongoing projects, and the board has discussed this a number of times, but we have projects under construction at Northern and Bladensburg, a funded project for the electrification of Cinderbed Road, and then a 5-year contract for bus procurements that includes up to 400 electric buses as part of that contract. Mention here, we're also undertaking a feasibility study for the electrification of the potential electrification of the Metro Access fleet. As discussed with the board in previous sessions, safe and reliable service will always be our highest priority for Metrobus and, well, of course, all of Metro's services. So as current market conditions and funding availability make it increasingly difficult to execute a transition to zero emission bus. A lot of that is due to the domestic market for zero emission buses, as there's only really one manufacturer who is Buy America compliant, who can deliver the scale of bus purchases that we need to maintain our fleet. And then again, just regardless of that, the state of the zero emission bus market and the availability of funding, we're going to remain focused on having a safe and reliable fleet available for service. So what that means in practical terms is the Metro's goals of conversion to a fully zero emission fleet by 2042 and only purchasing zero emission buses beginning in FY 2027 are very much at risk and practically without the funding and without the sophistication in the market are unachievable at this stage. So we're going to have to revisit those goals as an agency in the upcoming year.
Yes, Dr. Lowe.
Okay, I mean, it also sounds to me like even if more funding was available, it is not at all clear that the best thing to do would be to spend it on electric buses.
That's correct, yes.
I mean, that seems like a super key takeaway. Like, what about these fire systems? Okay, so I think understanding that is and starting to communicate that out is critical. We should definitely revisit those goals. And I could use a little clarification on what is currently in the capital plan, even though I have a copy of the capital plan. We have a plan that's to make sure that we have the buses that we need to run our service plan. Currently, the vast majority of those buses are diesel. We have this little baby plan here for a few electric buses. That's still, the current plan still has that fleet getting bigger because Northern and Blade are both going to expand. That's funded. It's still happening to expand charging capacity at those bus garages.
Yes, both Northern Bus Garage and Bladensburg are underway, under construction, and are include electrification as part of that those facility projects. I think importantly, there's one distinction. Northern has been designed and is progressing as an electric-only facility, whereas Bladensburg will have CNG capacity as well.
Right. I remember looking at the tank. Okay, so we're still on track to get the number of buses that we were planning for in order to use the charging capacity that's at those two garages?
Yes, so the 400 electric buses that are part of the contract and options in that contract are enough to enough buses to fill Northern and provide electric buses for Bladensburg. So that obviously was intentional coordination between the bus procurement and those two facilities.
Yeah, okay. And so when we say that there's no funding to continue the zero emission transition, but we do have funding to get diesel buses. If we, like, we're not going to have like no buses.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think in the 6-year program, we're the proposal continues the execution of prior programs and prior approved 6-year CIPs. That includes the electric buses for those two facilities. It includes completing those two facilities. At the end of the 6-year period, we will have, unless there is additional investment in Metro's overall capital program, we will be very constrained across the board, and there will be choices at that point among the different capital needs and where to invest the limited resources that we do have.
Yeah.
Some of that would be for replacement of the bus fleet, but maybe not at the scale, the pace, at the level that we would expect for keeping the average fleet age down, safe, reliable service. That
It's that tight. Like it's like there's not even enough for the diesel ones, much less electric buses, which cost more and have additional capital investment needs.
Yeah, I think importantly also a hybrid bus or a CNG bus is potentially half the cost of an electric bus. So looking at a constrained overall capital program and choices among different fleet types with that big of a cost differential and the requirement to replace buses, there will be some fairly clear decisions at that point.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a conversation really worth having and exploring more thoroughly as we start to get super realistic about the fact that 6 years is not that long a time. Okay, thanks.
So then what about Senator Bed in terms of buses? You said we have enough to be able to get buses to Northern and Bladensburg.
Yeah, I apologize. I should have said Cinderbed as well.
And Cinderbed? Okay, I'm just checking.
Because Cinder's all electric because we got that FTA grant.
So it is, the retrofit will add electric capacity.
Oh, okay.
there is diesel fueling capability there now where we're providing service.
Okay. So there's flexibility there as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, look, I mean, obviously, we've had pressure on this topic, but I think we've laid out the facts, and they are what they are. So we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that any bus is an environmental win compared to having all those folks driving individually. So anything else
Just
on this one?
more
Yeah.
of just a comment, which is we can, I think the board probably between now and the end of the fiscal year may want to take action to clarify.
On the goals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the direct, we can frame something up and bring that back, and maybe that aligns really well with the board action on the budget itself. So there's alignment behind the 6-year CIP on that.
Yeah, we should line it up with CIP.
Okay, we're happy to work on that. And to your point, Chair Letourneau, on this, from the environmental point of view, quite frankly, the best thing we can do, and of course we color our money between operating and capital, but the number one thing a transit agency can do, period, for the environment is run more service. Is to get more people on actual service today, regardless of the future itself. So that's why this Better Bus Network redesign is actually such a big deal for this organization. And we can get to more high frequency routes, get more people on the service, and then we got to look towards service on the weekends and at evenings, so then we can get people to be a 2-car to a 1-car, 1-car to a 0-car family, and then really drive that agenda. So.
Okay. Why don't we move on to the next one?
Thank you. So next is rail car maintenance capacity. So in 2014, Metro adopted industry best practice in rail car maintenance protocols. So essentially, we moved from a practice of midlife overhauls when the rail car is roughly halfway through its useful life, doing a major rehabilitation and replacement of key components of the rail car, to a cyclical maintenance program where the road is touched more often and components are addressed at the individual component's useful life. So what that means is more maintenance activity spread out over the life of the rail car. That means creates a need for facility capacity to conduct that work. So in looking at those capacity needs more than a decade ago, Metro considered and proposed a new facility to support that scheduled maintenance program and scheduled maintenance activities, and acquired a property the property I mentioned earlier near New Carrollton to build out that facility. A number of issues happened over the course of several years that made that project cost prohibitive, including some unforeseen issues with the site, some soil conditions, complexity of the construction of that activity. So after several years and attempts to value engineer and reduce the cost of the program, the pressures of inflation and cost escalation really made that, again, cost prohibitive. So we took a pause a couple of years ago, as discussed with the board, and reevaluated and rescoped this approach to the project, looking to again, after that reevaluation, our existing real estate assets and locations where this work could be supported. We determined that a portion of the Dulles Rail Yard facility could be retrofitted to support a lot of this scheduled maintenance activity for rail cars. So we have established now a project for the retrofit of a portion of Dulles Rail Yard for a scheduled maintenance facility with a cost estimate of about $200 million included in the proposed CIP. This is really needed for us to, again, to be able to maintain the rail car fleet, especially the 7,000 and future 8,000 series rail cars, using this scheduled maintenance approach. And again, without an investment in a Metro-owned local facility, we would have to consider these sort of non-preferred and likely very costly approaches of outsourcing railcar maintenance and rehabilitation work to facilities offsite and even elsewhere in the country, and that of course would impact availability of railcars for service and drive a lot of cost. So the CIP includes this refined proposal, and not unlike the training facility, we are in the process of scoping, finalizing the scope and refining the scope of exactly what will be performed in this new facility, and what will be, how it will be supplemented by improvements at other rail yards and maintenance facilities across the system.
Thanks. $200 million is certainly a lot better than $700 million. And it's not often that we get to talk about things that are actually in the district that I represent. So I've toured Dulles Rail Yard. I think isn't it the largest of its kind, at least either in the US or the East Coast, by size, by acreage?
By acreage and footprint, that's
Yeah.
how I understand it.
So that said, I think utilizing it further, gets greater bang for the buck. And I think it makes a lot of sense. So it seems like a good solution. Yes, Dr. Love.
Matt, I'm super happy for you. Metro does not have the capacity to perform required maintenance activities with existing infrastructure is like the single scariest sentence I've ever heard at a board meeting or read in a deck. So, but now that, it's kind of like saying Voldemort, we definitely have to do something about it now. At the end of this, at the end of 200 million in the 6-year CIP, what would be the status of this? How far toward achieving this SMP capacity would we be?
So we intend to be able to achieve 100% of the SMP capacity. Yes, I think part of the refinement of the scope now is how much of that capacity is at this retrofitted facility and how much is performed in other rail yards, as I was mentioning earlier. So we do have a rehabilitation facility at Greenbelt that performs similar types of work today, but it's also an active rail yard that deploys service each day. So there's some likely some balancing of activities across different facilities, but the intent here is to support the entire scheduled maintenance program that the team has laid out.
Okay, I mean, then absolutely, 200 million, it seems like a bargain at the price, solves a huge problem. This seems like an amazing idea. Great work.
Ms. Klein.
So this is really helpful actually, because we've talked about the heavy rail overhaul facility a few times, and this sort of from beginning to end explanation of why and how we got here and what it's going to do is really helpful. So 15 years ago, we did actually just take a bunch of rail cars out for their midlife overhaul, right? And just they went out and then eventually they came back. And so we were just more constricted in fleet, right? And so this is a change in the way that Metro is doing the maintenance to, it sounds like, to have more access to the cars, more efficient process, and be able to just manage it better in-house. That makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate you kind of walking us through that. So between now and when this new facility is up and running, what are we doing about managing this that we don't really have the capacity to manage right now?
Thank you for the question, Board Member Klein. There's a relationship between this need and the timing and the age of the 7,000 series rail cars. So the urgency here is to have a facility up and running as those rail cars reach the point where we have to do this more intensive first phase of scheduled maintenance. So, of course, maintenance, daily maintenance, and regular and corrective maintenance is happening on the fleet at existing facilities. But in the again, the later part of our current 6-year period, we have a big surge of need for capacity to do this work. So we not unlike the training facility, we really need to get going on this to be ready for that when that time comes.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Chair Santos?
Thanks. Just a couple of clarifications. So one of the bullet points says it's not intended to produce operating cost savings, and I'm a little. Can you just explain that? Because intuitively, it seems like it would produce cost savings if you're being more efficient about managing the real estate assets, whether it's Greenbelt or other locations, and why is that the case?
Thank you for the question, Chair. So a couple of things. I think, yes, the intent here is to include cost efficiency and broadly operating capital together, not certainly that's been part of the approach here. Contain overall life cycle costs and manage it closely. I think the reason that's on this slide is there was a question about the driver or the why for this project, and the why is much more about the scheduled maintenance capacity needs, the efficiency and cost and long-term cost management are also a benefit of this approach. But it was what's driving this is really the need to maintain our rail cars.
Okay. And then in terms of the prior facility or the prior solution and the current one, is indeed it's great that you all came up with a creative solution. Can you just explain how much was already spent on the prior facility and what's going to happen to that site?
Yes, ma'am. I'd have to get back with you on the specifics. I mean, I can tell you, I mean, the land acquisition, was in the neighborhood, I believe, 60 to 70 million, fair, appraised, process that we went through. And I think we'll have the opportunity to show you shortly, but that is the intent to, be the location for the new training center. It is immediately adjacent, to our Carmen Turner facility, so it works well for a lot of different reasons. And one of the reasons why we want to do the training center there is to take advantage of the, property that we did properly acquire.
Thanks. So just to clarify, it sounds like we're retaining it within our portfolio, just repurposing it, correct?
Yes, ma'am, exactly.
Because my understanding, based on documents that have been shared with the board, is that my understanding was about 60 million roughly to acquire it, but quite a bit in years post-acquisition spent on design and whatnot. So I'm glad to hear that the funds spent in that area will still be of use. It's not, not wasted. Thanks.
Mr. Clark.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to make a kind of a little comment. I think at this heavy repair overhaul facility to me is really symbolic of us transitioning to a strategy vision of what we are trying to be and not being project by project. And a good example to me, and again, there's no fault of anyone. This is like 20 years of making. A good example is if we were in a different part of the world, we would have built the Silver Line with alignment on our 7K vehicle acquisition, in alignment with our new signaling system, and alignment with heavy repair overhaul. And what we've done, and it's America kind of grant funding problem, but also when we don't have an actual vision and locked in as a strategic plan, none of those things are seen as a programmatic approach. They're all seen as individual component approach. And so now we're going back to a Dulles facility that, if thought of 15 years ago, would have been looked at differently. And buying the 7,000 and let alone now the 8,000 series trains, not in conjunction with our signaling technology, causes a complete different way to do it that you would do in Europe, Asia. Quite frankly, Toronto's doing it that way now. Montreal does it that way now. MARTA in Atlanta is doing it that way now. So I think this is a good chance for us, and why this is such a good conversation with the board is to not worry about the yearly CIP. It's what do we want this agency to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and then how those monies effectuate that. And that is just an organizational, more importantly, a regional jurisdictional funding approach, and why I think DMV moves is so important, because we can get people grounded on what we should be thinking about is what the rail system or the bus system looks like versus annualized components. Because we are not getting the ultimate opportunity cost out of all of our investments, and that's why that's one of the ways why the STP was so important to try to drive that kind of vision and conversation. So I just thought it's really, this project is emblematic of, again, no one doing anything wrong, as much as when you don't have predictability of funding long-term, you do it based on this. And it's like renovating a house versus if you were, thinking of the whole house. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that.
Okay, so I think we have one more slide left, which is just next steps. And then I know there may be some other questions about things that we didn't cover. So why don't you just quickly knock that out, and then we'll open it back up here.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just briefly, next steps here, we will be conducting our public engagement on the overall budget, including the capital program and public hearings. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we intend to come back next month with some revisions to the proposed CIP that will largely be the detailed version of what I mentioned earlier. And then present that revised CIP for the board's consideration and adoption this spring. And later on this spring and summer, we intend some deeper dive discussion into our rail automation and program development process. So at the last meeting, we had some discussion of that. Our team is hard at work preparing information for both for our team in developing the program, but also to share with the board and for the board's consideration, as well as our partners. So that's an upcoming step. And then just here, we have published to the website our detailed few hundred-page capital improvement program document. And this is where, as we were discussing earlier, we have a lot of the details on projected capital needs, future concepts, as well as some of our performance measurement program on our capital investments. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. I think there were a few other questions or comments. Did you have, Chair Santos?
Thank you. And building on what the general manager was saying, can you just also clarify when you will be framing this capital budget for this upcoming year in the context of the broader vision? Because I think there are a number of ideas, unfunded, but great concepts that have been kicking around, whether it's anticipating, I don't know, the new stadium that may be, construct a new sports facility. I'm just citing something, right? Or there's a number of other ideas that other board members have raised in their respective jurisdictions and may be of interest to one or the other. When will some of those be? I think it's important to frame this in that broader strategy, as you talked about, which is how does this all fit, whether those things are funded or not funded yet?
Yeah, I think great question. So they would not fit in this because this is the actual CIP itself. But I think that is where we kind of want to build this rail automation program, have really good discussion with the board, really set out what the next 20 to 25 years looks like. In a lot of ways, it's the Metro map from 1980 and what it is today. That's kind of the effort we're looking at and the opportunity cost. And then secondarily, it's where these other investments around the region. So one is the Better Bus Network redesign. That's clearly the most important uplift. There's some places like Farragut that we believe need to be solved long-term. The stations don't connect, that has to happen at long-term. Arguably Gallery and Metro Center need to be collected pedestrian-wise. We have our Blue, Orange, Silver which we believe the automation program could actually potentially solve a major part of that program, and we want to work through more of that. We have some bus rapid transit stuff that we're talking with our regional partners about, and we think we got to get towards a regional BRT plan versus an individual jurisdictional plan, which we play a role and they play a role in. And then, of course, there's potential economic or big activity center like a new stadium that could fit in there as well. So I think the opportunity where that all comes together, in my mind, is talking with the board starting maybe sometime this summer into the fall about how our strategic transformation plan is updated between where we want to go. Because every 3 years we have to do that strategic plan update by law, let alone that we should do it anyway. And I think that's where these two things kind of connect together. So the actual spend document, which is almost exclusively just the bread and butter, standard repair modernization, whatever term we want to use, stuff. And then what we really want to do as an organization going forward. So that's the way I think we're looking at it. And then the DMV moves process helps inform that. So then when the board has the strategic plan update late next year, then later this year, that would be informed through the whole DMV move process and all the work that we're doing on these bigger programs. And that's where I guess we're thinking about. I don't know if that helps or if you have different thoughts.
It does, but just more anchoring on terms of time frame. So it sounds like I heard you say this summer. This summer means June. This means, when does that mean?
Well, to me, we would start the strategic planning process with the board sometime, maybe this summer into the fall. Meaning, and likely we'll have some new board members, and the idea is, I think we have to have a new strategic plan approved for the next calendar year. So if the goal is to get that done at the end of this year, we would have obviously the workshops and conversations throughout. And it doesn't matter whether we started in July or we started September, but that second half of the year, calendar year, really driving the DMV moves conversation to our strategic plan.
That's helpful.
Okay. If there's nothing further then on the capital program, thank you for that presentation. We are not done with finance. I know we're running behind. We can maybe try to accelerate a little bit in the next presentation, which is our mid-year financial update. It's mostly pretty good news. So good news goes down better than bad news, at least. You want to do this now, or we have to break after this anyway, so this will incentivize everybody to.
It's still technically morning, so.
It is, barely.
Good morning. Good morning, board members. Good morning, Chair Letourneau, members of the board. My name is Yetunde Olumide, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. This morning, I'll be presenting the Q2 year-to-date FY25 financial update. So Metro's FY25 mid-year results highlight our commitment to financial sustainability and strategic resource management, advancing Metro's strategic transformation plan objectives of both financial sustainability and service excellence. By aligning day-to-day decisions and long-term strategies with our SDP goals, Metro continues to ensure safe and reliable service for the region. Metro ended the second year of FY25 with total revenue $37 million favorable to budget, driven mostly by a 15% increase in paid rail ridership, higher parking revenues, and strong investment income. Total expenses were about $28 million unfavorable to budget, while personnel costs were unfavorable due to the timing of preventive maintenance transfers. Non-personnel expenses were about $5 million favorable to budget due to lower fuel costs and reduced other expenses. So Metro continues to see a strong ridership and revenue growth, with an 8% increase in ridership across Metro Rail and Metro Bus compared to Q2 of FY24. Metro Rail revenue was about 32% higher than the same quarter in the same previous fiscal year, driven by increased paid rail ridership and higher parking utilization. While Metro Access ridership decreased about 21% compared to Q2 of FY24, Metro remains committed to offering more convenient, cost-effective options to support customer needs. Metro Rail ridership was about 8.1 million trips favorable to budget, reflecting sustained demand recovery as regional travel patterns stabilize. Changes in federal telework policies may continue to influence ridership trends and revenue projections in future quarters. Year to date, as of December, capital expenses are about $278 million under budget, indicating lower than anticipated spending in the first half of the fiscal year. The full FY25 forecast also anticipates expenditures to remain below budget, and we included a high and low range in our forecast. The high range is right about $242 million below budget, and the low range $371 million below budget. We'll share more in the next quarter. So market conditions and schedule delays, some of which Tom talked about already, of some projects contributed to reduced capital expenditures in the first half of the fiscal year. Year-to-date capital expenditures through December totaled about $835 million compared to a budget of about $1.1 billion. Preventive maintenance transfers to the capital budget are expected to increase during the second half of the fiscal year, and the total amount is still projected to be less than what was originally budgeted. Here are a few highlights of key capital programs and projects focus for the second half of FY25, supporting long-term sustainability and critical infrastructure improvements. Escalator replacement program will advance locations faster. Operations and maintenance facility at the Bladensburg bus garage is also expected to complete sometime in the summer. New faregate installations as well will complete across the system. Also, the 8000 series rail cars is also expected to complete final design review phase also this summer. So staff will continue to monitor and manage ridership and revenue and expenses to ensure alignment with budgetary goals and financial sustainability. We will also provide periodic updates to the board and recommend adjustments to the proposed FY26 budget at the February board meeting. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions from the board at this time.
Okay, do we have questions on ridership revenue? The good news I was referring to, of course, was the ridership.
I'll take the parking.
Yes, parking good too. Okay. With no further business to come before the committee, we stand adjourned. I'd like to take a moment just to remind everybody that the public hearings on the proposed 26 budget and associated service changes will take place next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Information can be found at womata.com/budget. We'll now take a quick break before the start of our Board of Directors meeting. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Valerie Santos, Chair of the WMATA Board. Thank you for being here today. Let's begin with the approval of the agenda. I'd like to consider the agenda approved with one change. There's not an employee spotlight today, but are there any objections to the agenda as amended? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Thank you. We have 4 sets of minutes for approval. There's the December 12 board meeting, executive sessions from December 12 and December 20, and as well from January 16th. I'd like to consider these minutes approved as presented. Any objections? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Thank you. There is no one signed up for public comment today, so we're going to go straight to our Accessibility Advisory Committee Chair, Mr. Patrick Sheehan. Pat, welcome.
Okay, I will make my report short. Excellent meeting this morning here, though I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair Santos, for coming and speaking to the AAC. You gave us a lot of things to focus on, and I appreciated that. A couple of areas that I wanted to talk about, particularly in the first, starting off with Metro Access. We're going to be looking at the new vans coming on board. We saw them in September, had some recommendations. They'll be back, I think, in February for us to take a look at. We know that we are still below performance levels that we need to achieve. We're at about 90%, so we are moving in the right direction. We had a team implemented in January that's further going to improve performance levels. I will say that also Mr. Blake is doing yeoman's work with respect to staying in touch with individuals, making sure questions are answered. He's doing a great job, and folks that appreciate his level of work and understand the resources being put in, and we think that we're moving in the right direction with respect to Metro Access. With respect to bus rail and the work that has been done there, Mr. Dermer was very instrumental in working with us last month. We got a report from leadership within Prince George's County who are going to have us look at a report, I believe it'll be in April, with recommendations from the Transit Vision Plan. So we will be engaged with them and working to implement those recommendations, or understand the recommendations and see where they'll be implemented as a partner with PG County. Also, the work that they're doing with respect to DMV moves, same individuals are there. So we're very much complimenting the work that they're doing in the DMV moves area, particularly with bus rapid transit. So I think we're moving in a good direction with them. We want to have a dialogue with that group and make sure that we get a more robust bus system within Prince George's County, particularly even looking at where we are with a budget deficit, I think of $3 billion or something like that in Maryland. So, but we're pleased to be working with them. And thank you to Don Drummer for his work. Lastly, I would say that the disability community that I've talked to, AAC plus other groups, are pleased with what they're seeing, I think, with the overall recommendation with respect to the budget, keeping the scope, the area, the schedule for Metro Access, and for most of the bus routes, I think is a positive. Certainly, we're in a much better position than we were last year at this time. So I think it's full speed ahead. I think we are making progress, a good steady progress. The reports today also indicate that the metro system is in a healthy way moving forward. You have the support of the AAC moving forward, and we're also coordinating activities with the RAC to make sure recommendations from I think both groups are positive and consistent with each other. Are there any questions for me going forward? I guess not. Good. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Pat. And I just also want to acknowledge, and I think the general manager will speak to this, that WMATA leadership has noted and expressed concern about some recent unfortunate incidents related to Metro Access, and I think the general manager will make some comments just about what's being done to ensure that some of the systemic challenges won't occur again, or that will be addressed so that those incidents don't occur again. Thank you, and now we'll call on Mr. Cole Stout for the RAC report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start first with the action item you'll have later on your agenda. I think the RAC, as we've kind of filled some of the vacancies we had, unexpected vacancies we had over the summer, we recognize some of the structural issues that we believe the RAC to have, and so we're asking the board to expand the RAC by 4 members. There'll be 3 jurisdictionally appointed seats and a reserved at-large seat for a member of the youth community below 18. I think reflecting, I think as a RAC, we want to ensure that we always have a voice for the youth on our, because they are such a wide swath of the riders, and we want to ensure that that perspective is brought to the forefront in our discussions. We also ask you to make some adjustments to allow virtual meetings, which started in the pandemic, and technically we are not allowed to do via our bylaws and how the board liaison is structured. And then, our last meeting this month, we talked a lot about engagement, how, Metro plans to engage on the budget and through Better Bus. We moved back our meeting, which is supposed to be next week, to the 12th, so that way RAC members can participate in those hearings next week. And so we expect to have RAC members at each of the 3 budget hearings and participating, mostly in a listening role as members of the public. Share their opinions, because we have an outlet to do that, and that's every month at our RAC meetings. And lastly, RAC members really wanted to express their appreciation for Metro staff and all of the operators and employees who kept the trains and the buses and Metro Access moving over the past month through all the snow and the sleet and the national events. It's really great to know that, especially during national events, when you cannot physically drive or walk around downtown, you don't have to think about, oh, how am I going to get around? It's just Metro, and it's reliable, and communication from staff to riders was really appreciated and easy to understand. We do, want to bring in some staff to talk about, the snow plans and service levels and how those are communicated. Overall, it was a really great, I think, how Metro is communicating, but I do think there's some room for improvement, especially how staff's communicating about what is and is not running and what detours and how all of that's interacting with the tech that is now available to riders. So they're not standing at bus stops where it shows a bus is coming, but a bus actually isn't coming. So those are the things that we think we can work with Metro staff on in the future. But that is it for my report this afternoon, I guess now.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? All right, so that concludes our advisory reports. Now on to the chair's report, which actually builds perfectly on what Cole was just saying, which is some administrative business. So the Riders Advisory Council, working with Dr. Brian Helfer, which is the board's liaison to the RAC, has recommended changes to its bylaws, which are now before us. The changes would increase the group size from 11 to 15 by adding, as Mr. Stout mentioned, 3 jurisdictionally appointed seats and 1 seat reserved for a youth member. The bylaws amendments would also add to members' responsibilities, requiring them to establish and maintain connections with community groups, and include some housekeeping changes to align the bylaws with current practice. I would like to move approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Martin Proctor. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. The ayes have it. Thank you. Oh, okay. I need our members who are dialed in online. That would be you, Mr. McAndrew, to pipe up as well.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, so next, as my colleague, Director Letourneau highlighted, we want to encourage our customers and stakeholders to join us for the budget hearings, the public hearings next week, which are on February 3rd, 4th, and 5th. There will be 3 in-person hearings and 1 fully virtual hearing. Needless to say, when you, our stakeholders, are involved in the budget process, it assures that Metro understands the specific needs and preferences of our communities, which can lead to better service and more efficient allocation of resources. Your feedback can provide valuable insights that lead to more informed and effective decision-making. If you haven't taken our budget survey, we encourage you to do so as well. The survey is available online, so wamata.com/budget to take the survey, leave comments, and to get further details about how to participate. And the budget hearings are Monday where, Jennifer?
Monday will be in the Eisenhower Metro offices. No, I thought you were there.
Sorry, go for it.
So our Monday public hearing will be at our Eisenhower offices in Alexandria, Virginia. The Tuesday hearings that'll be the virtual hearing at noon, and then the 6 o'clock hearing will be here at the DC Metro headquarters. And then on Wednesday, we'll have our final hearing at 6 p.m. at the New Carrollton Metro location.
Perfect, thank you. Next, we would like to recognize that January is National Human Trafficking Prevention Month. Every year since 2010, the President has dedicated this month to raise awareness about human trafficking and to educate public about how to identify and prevent this type of crime. During this month, we celebrate the efforts of international organizations, anti-trafficking entities, law enforcement officials, survivor advocates, as well as communities of faith, businesses, and private citizens all around the world to raise awareness about human trafficking. Transit plays a key role in the prevention of human trafficking through several key actions, which is awareness and training, public awareness campaigns, collaboration with law enforcement, and safe reporting mechanisms. By leveraging these strategies, transit systems can help disrupt the activities of traffickers and provide critical support to victims. Finally, I'd like to note that our next set of public board meetings will occur on February 27. This concludes my report, and I will now turn the floor over to our general manager for his report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to thank you, on the board for recognizing last night's tragedy with a moment of silence this morning. Obviously, this region comes together in crisis. We all know that, and what was on display last night and earlier today. Just really want to recognize our first responder community, who we're part of and we deal with on a daily and weekly basis. Obviously, it's an unthinkable kind of tragedy. Lots of lessons learned coming out of that, and we just want to pass on our condolences to everyone in the region and across the country. This month has been, I'll just say, this has been a challenging month here at Metro. We've had 2 snowstorms, almost record deep cold weather. We had 3 national special security events. On the good side, we had the Commanders in the NFC Championship. We got new pandas at the zoo. And through all that, our team has just literally worked nonstop. So from senior executives who are here today, people like Brian, Andy, Jamie, and others, Christy, that have just literally not taken a day off, probably in almost 4 weeks, to our frontline staff in the middle of the night, fixing rail breaks and keeping buses going. It has been a very, very, very busy month here at Metro. I want to just take a special recognition of Roy, Brian, Roy, the chief, and some others that really helped last night. Our warming buses out to support the recovery effort, and within literally minutes, putting together a plan so we could run more Silver Line service, and we stayed open till I think about 2:30 in the morning, making sure anyone that got diverted to Dulles could get safely back into the city. So we kind of turned that on a dime, and there was a lot of people working very late, part of that recovery, and I just want to recognize them. With that, there's some stuff I want to really highlight about 2024. We have a video that we'll push out as well. For this moment, we won't put together. But we did have a fantastic 2024 as an agency, and I hope the board is as proud as us and the staff team of what really we've all accomplished together. The Metro Rewind was an incredible hit this year. Last year, we were the first agency to ever do this. Some other people are stealing our idea, which is the best form of flattery. This year, the team really upped their game. We have 150,000 people have typed in their number to get actually how many trips they've taken. There was offices that were doing kind of competitions and then posting it on social about who took more trips. We got thousands of new members, people signed up into getting our information. So it's incredible engagement. And we linked everything to merchandise. So we got almost 150% increase in merch sales driven through the people going on Rewind. So the real value of this is it's people really loving their use of the Metro system and I think the civic and regional pride of this incredible asset. And it really brings a lot of kind of attention to the value of Metro, I think holistically, economically, environmentally, and otherwise. So just kudos to the team, and we really like that so many people in the region enjoyed it this year. Couple other things, we always try to highlight the larger kind of strategic initiatives here with the board on automatic train operation. Overall, going pretty well. We've had some station overruns on the red line, as you're aware. We anticipate some, in a few places there might be a little bit more than we anticipated, but in some ways that's good. We're really fleshing out all of those little issues. So when we go into the full system-wide implementation, we have those. Some of these are training and just kind of experience. A couple are some system stuff. So again, really safe operation. These are kind of reliability, convenience, but the trips are going faster. Customers are getting shorter amount of time on the train. On-time performance is actually increased. So, and now we're delivering red line service with actually less rail cars than we did before ATO. So all of the things that we assumed would happen are there, and we're just kind of fine tuning while we work towards full system-wide implementation. Again, we thank our partner, the WMSC, for their work with us on that. The chief really hit the box on the left a lot, or sorry, the right a lot. So I won't go into that too much, but I know this has been a board focus. We've been working very hard on this. The part that I want to really highlight here is this is not a one-off thing. This is now part of how we are doing daily patrol out on the system. So it's not just we surge for a week and then we're done. It is now integrated to our approach. We are clearly deterring people from riding that won't pay. We're also making arrests for people that have open warrants and things of that nature, which continue to drive safety on the system. So our thing is very simple. We don't want to issue any fines. We don't want to arrest anyone. We just want people to pay their fare that delivers the service. And we're going to keep hitting this messaging really hard. There's some anecdotal evidence that we're getting a lift on revenue, but we really need, I think, we're hoping by the end of February we'll have enough statistical validity to see how much we've really moved that needle. Next thing is the tap and go payment system we've talked about. We are generally on schedule for that. A lot of complex work going on between multiple vendors, but really just want to let the board know that this is a very big focus for us as an agency. Lots of senior exec members are personally involved in this. We'll let you know if we foresee any delays, but we really want to have Metro Rail alive by the end of May this year. We definitely think it will help on visitors, especially we're such a visitor-based location. And then the less frequent riders is where we're hoping to make an impact as well. On the ridership side, 2024, we ended the year with over 250 million trips. I don't know about you all, but when I tell people that number, it kind of blows their mind away when they're not actually in our industry. So I encourage you all to, when you get a chance to talk to, whether it's business executives or nonprofits or others, it gives them the scope of the complexity of this organization. What's great is tapped entry was much higher than overall ridership, which again goes to we're collecting more fares from and knocking down fare evasion, which is really good. Tuesday, we had our busiest 8 to 9 a.m. rush hour since the pandemic, which again means in January, January is not a high month for us. we are seeing really good growth in ridership. And we had 122 people doing that, 122,000 people doing that hour. On the federal employee, obviously, that's a big topic in our region. We saw more coming back in December, and then on the 14th, we saw our highest day since the pandemic with 86,000 federal proxy taps. So we expect that to, again, we're providing really good service, and we just want to provide that for federal workers like everyone else. A couple of year-over-year increases on station specifically, I thought would be worth highlighting. McLean Station grew 30% year-over-year. And if you haven't been to McLean recently, there's like a city popped up right there. It is really amazing what is going on there. Lots of big companies, big office buildings, and clearly a lot of people using Metro. Potomac Yard, is coming together, and this number was before the Virginia Tech campus just opened. And then we're seeing it, in Maryland. We're seeing it in other places as well. It's really good to see overall ridership up, and then select markets even higher. We're also seeing a very good upside on parking as well at the outer stations. So both on revenue, but also just use. It's really good to see. And then lastly, as the chair mentioned, I just want to highlight on the Metro Access side, I really appreciate Pat's comments, not only about Christian, but about the whole team. We're very lucky to have Christian. He's just a fantastic, just dedicated individual. The whole team is working very hard. Metro Access, as the board knows, we moved to a different procurement this year with a sole contractor. I think it's clear that staffing up and some challenges happened with that contract. There have been a few incidents recently. I would say they are definitely anomalous and not systemic, but that means we got to continue to keep a laser focus on this incredibly important service we deliver. So a couple things that have happened. Another contractor was brought on. January's performance, Pat actually stole some of my thunder, is back up to about 90%, which is great. We're going to keep working on that as well. A lot of that actually is to do with traffic, but part of it is on us, and we're kind of improving our part. Call center was a huge problem. I'll just be really honest. People were not getting the responsiveness. Sarah Christie flexed in from the Metro call center into Metro Access to help out, trying to have an all-team approach, but they really just had to staff up, and they've done that. So we expect call volumes to get managed much better going forward. Abilities Ride continues to be a great service that we are making. Not only is it an option, we are promoting to get people even better access to trips, and it's made up 50% of those trips. And then I just want to highlight, I think it's lost sometimes on people for some of the great work Metro Access does, that even during the storms, when the weather is really bad and the road conditions are bad, we still moved, I think the worst day of the storm, I think it was almost 1,500 to 2,000 people receiving life-saving dialysis and cancer treatments, because that's what Metro Access does every day. And so we have employees out there, and in this case, to really make sure people can get where they need to go. So we acknowledge that there's been a couple issues. We don't believe they're, again, systemic, but they do matter. There's laser focus from the senior executive team on it as well. And then we're going to just keep working on that and holding our contractor accountable. And we'll keep reviewing our performance with everyone on the board and public. So with that, Madam Chair, that is my report. Happy to take any questions or thoughts if needed.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the general manager? Okay, everyone wants lunch. All right, we will move on to our consent items. We have 2 items on the board's consent agenda today. I would like to move approval of the following. The first item is approval of collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police. Staff is requesting approval of the contract settlement between WMATA and the Fraternal Order of Police, which is Metro Transit Police Labor Committee Lodge 1, and to authorize the general manager to execute a new CBA. The contract would run through September 30, 2029. The second consent item is a technical correction to operating subsidy allocation formulas, which was the resolution 2024-31. Staff is requesting correction of the paratransit subsidy allocation formula as had been put forward in resolution 2024-31, which the board had approved in November of 2024. That resolution, which only updated the Metrorail and Metrobus operating subsidy formulas, cited an outdated Metro Access operating subsidy formula as part of its documentation, and this particular action will correct the record. I move approval, and could I please have a second?
Second.
Director Klein, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good. Any opposed? I didn't hear any noes, so these items are approved. Next, we can quickly go through reports by the jurisdictions. Mr. Letourneau, because I think Paul's not on.
I don't think we have anything to report.
Okay, Mr. McAndrew, anything?
Nope, not at the moment.
Do we want to talk about pandas?
No, I don't want to talk about pandas, but I do want to talk about Lunar New Year, which is here. Happy New Year, everybody. It's the Year of the Snake, and the DC Lunar New Year Parade will be this Sunday at 2 p.m. in Chinatown. And what's the best way to get there? Metro. See you there.
Federal government?
Yes, thank you. So I just want to acknowledge, as I'm sure everyone in the room is aware, earlier this week, Sean Duffy was confirmed as the 20th Secretary of Transportation over at the U.S. Department of Transportation. Unfortunately, he had to jump into action 2 days later due to yesterday's tragic events. But we are looking forward to working with him in the coming weeks as he and his team get settled in. Did you have anything?
Thank you. With no further business to come before the board, we stand adjourned, and thank you for joining us today. We'll now move to the board executive session. In accordance with the bylaws, I, Valerie Santos, request that the Board of Directors convene or reconvene an executive session to discuss the following matters pursuant to Article 2, Paragraph 9, subsections. A, budgetary matters that may affect legal positions, WMATA contracts, or sensitive relationships with local jurisdictions and the federal government. C, personnel or labor issues, including discussions of labor contracts and labor negotiations, consideration or interviews of candidates for employment, and the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, or resignation of individuals. And lastly, audit matters and investigations to include, for example, audits of IT security matters and investigations to be referred to further criminal investigations or prosecution. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Letourneau. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. We're adjourned.